Okay, good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for January 11th, 2021. 10 a.m. session, no public testimony during this review session. The first items are adjournments. Item number 1, 853-53BZ, 2402-16 Knapp Street, Brooklyn. Item number 2 is 2019-69 and 70A, 341, 343 Mallory Avenue, Staten Island. Item number 3 is 2019-67BZ, 2781 Coyle Street, Brooklyn. Item number 4 is 2019-276A, 15 Stewart Lane, Queens. Item number 5 is 19502BZ, 2797 Linden Boulevard, Brooklyn. Item number 6 is 2020-9BZ, 2611 123rd Street, Queen. Oh, wait a minute. I think
that one requested a withdrawal.
Yeah, withdrawal. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we
Okay.
have to motion to withdraw.
Move to withdraw that. Let me just make sure that there's no. Yeah. Okay. So on that one, it's that they couldn't figure out a way to make their argument for the variance. So they decided to withdraw. So I'd like to make a motion to withdraw.
Chair
They
Promoter?
submitted a formal.
Sorry.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a formal letter from December 30th.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
So the motion to withdraw, Madam Chair,
Yeah. Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta. Commissioner Shabeta, you're,
We didn't hear you. Say it. Do it
Aye.
again.
aye, thank you. Application's withdrawn. Another withdrawal is item number 7, 2019-225 to 253BZ. This is 70-114 Tennyson Drive and 348-370 Nelson Avenue and 6-50 Fitzgerald Avenue, Staten Island. This is
So
a
this
request
one
to
we
withdraw.
actually- Sorry, this one was actually closed, and we were going to vote on it, and the applicant instead submitted a request that we reopen, and then they submit a withdrawal so that it would be a withdrawal without prejudice. There were discussions about what that means, but in the long run, if they, even if it was with prejudice, if they submitted an application that was, say, substantially different than what was submitted previously, it wouldn't, the prejudice wouldn't apply, right? So, because it would be a different application. So,
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because this site had previous grants on it, would they be able to activate one of the previous grants, the last previous grant, as a extension of time to complete?
Commissioner Ollie Brown. So yeah, I don't recall when the time statutorily would have expired. So it may be that they're beyond the period allotted by our rules.
Mhm.
So
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do think that that's part of why they applied under a completely different application and as opposed to a major amendment or something.
Mhm.
I think, but it's a good question. So anyway, so then we should make it, if everyone's okay with, Chase, go ahead.
I just wanted to state for the board that the prior variance was granted on February 14th, 2012, and there were no actions taken on that grant or extensions.
Okay. So, right, so that would be one of those cases where we might look at it as abandoned. Never pursued, right? Okay, so then I'd like to make a motion to open so that we can accept the letter.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
aye.
And then, okay, withdrawal letter accepted, so then make a motion to accept their withdrawal without prejudice.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay, Item number 8, decision items, 18797BZ, 14802 Rockaway Boulevard, Queens.
We last heard this in September and closed. We received updated drawings that show the 5-foot front to back planting beds and the wheel stops. I just wish the planting had been shown and installed staggered as discussed. That's why the 5-foot depth. That's our best way of achieving a dense buffer. But we have what we have, and I don't want to delay it any further. The drawing still shows rhododendrons behind the dumpster area, even though arborvitae were planted. So, but I think we can leave it as an option on the drawings. I listened to the video of the last hearing, and I went on and on about the benefits of rhododendrons to dissuade rats from accumulating. So anyway, so just leave that on the drawings. But I just have to say, I hope the little trees that were planted actually do grow to 8 feet, because they're planted very far apart. Maybe that gives them a chance to breathe and grow even bigger. Photos were provided to show the progress and repair of the wall and fence, which is what we had directed them to do. And one of the reasons why we talked about a conditional approval, because we weren't sure if there'd be time to make those improvements on the site, but they actually did make those improvements. I just want to point, there was some confusion, I think, in terms of the photos. There was a late submission of all of the photos with a key plan, some 60-something photos. And that was kind of a misunderstanding, actually, by our project manager on what we had discussed. The instruction to the applicant was simply submit a key plan for the photos you're submitting. And they continued the numbering system from 47 to 60 or 57. And so that confused the project manager, and she went back and asked them for all the photos they'd ever submitted on a key plan. So now there's all the photos they ever submitted, but since the photos aren't dated, sometimes they apparently reveal elements that were corrected, but shown as uncorrected. So you'll see like the crumbling masonry wall, but then, you know, photo 57 shows it corrected, but you don't necessarily know they're the same shot, right? So that's a problem about having done that. So for the benefit of our project managers, when photos are submitted, they need to be keyed to the plan and they need to be dated, but it doesn't mean you show old photos, because that just confuses the board. Then we don't know what's the most current situation. So the only photos that are relevant to what we asked are 47 to 57, which was what was submitted initially for this hearing. I do think there was something that we missed at the last review session and hearing, which had to do with the lumen spread diagram. And when I listened to the video, Commissioner Shabeta actually said, "Is everybody okay with the lumen spread?" And I misunderstood him, and I missed my notes where I was commenting about lumen spread, and I heard him say landscape, even though he said lumens. So the issue is that the lumen spread diagram shows lumens that are significantly higher than 0 over the property line. So given that we've already closed this and we were interested in doing a conditional approval, I see Chase's hand up, just one second. I recommend that we have them in the condition, do the field testing the way it's required in our admin code, and based on the field testing, modify the lighting levels to make sure they're 0 at the residential property lines, because there are residences on two of those property lines. Chase, did you want to add something?
It appears that the TPPN, page 3 of the plans, the proposed store area is listed as 22,457 square feet, but the plans say TPPN 10 of 94 instead of 10 of 99. It says 20% of lot area. The TPPN actually permits 25% of the lot area. So I don't know if the applicant can get this back to us later today or tomorrow.
So-
But TPPN is supposed to be broken down into selling floor area, but not so much as the square footage of the entire convenience store.
Right, but so I saw your comment because you send those comments to me before the hearings. The fact is though, their entire store, the entire building is less than 2,500 square feet. So even if they were to break out selling area versus not selling area, it's automatically less than 2,500 square feet by a lot. So even though they did make a typo, it's 10 of, instead of 10 of 94, it should have been 10 of 99. And even though the calculation is basing it on the wrong thing, the result isn't substantive. So if we could, and because I don't want to hold this up and so if we could just articulate in our resolution that it's 10 of 99, that the measurement is 25%, et cetera, but the whole entire building is 2,500, less than 2,500 square feet, therefore, that would, I think,
That's
cover
it.
that. Okay. And then the last thing, yeah, we were talking about a conditional approval and a short leash because the site had been in pretty bad condition before. What kind of a short leash are we talking about? 2 years? You know, what? So Vice Chair Shanda.
Trying to find out when the previous term expired. And what is the overlap that we have, because typically it's a 10-year, right? And if we make it 5-year and they're already into the 5-year period, then you know, how much time is left? Would that be too onerous? Would it be feasible? I think is the question that I'm trying to get the answer to.
Right.
I'm looking through my.
And I'm sorry, board members, just as a point of clarification, that this application was approved pursuant to 73-11. So
Okay.
it's not a statutory term, it's a discretionary term. Again,
Okay.
not disputing the need for a term, just wanted to bring that to your attention.
But,
Thank you.
So just to clarify on that, I need to go quickly to the resolution if somebody can get to it. The original application was an amendment seeking to remove lot 39 from the application, and as well as to enlarge the building just that 133 square feet in order for that toilet room, right? So it may have been even submitted prior to there may not have been a term because it doesn't show, the heading doesn't describe any term.
Yes, Chase has his hand up.
There
Yeah.
was back in 1949, under a prior calendar number, the board granted a variance for a term of 15 years. And then at that same time granted a GCL 35. But the board then under this subject, I'm sorry, under 280-71BZ in 1971 granted this special permit under 73-211, and it has not had a term since.
Wait a minute, in 1970 something?
In 1971, the board granted a special permit under 73-211, and then there was a new 73-211 special permit granted in 2001.
And the 2001 one didn't have a term.
That's correct.
Okay, so in this case, then we're doing sort of a checkup term. That's really all we're doing, not necessarily to say a term of years, right? So what if they came back and say 3 years to check up on the status of the property, that everything is copacetic, and then and to make sure, of course, that the lighting needs to be corrected immediately. And I'm relying very much on the integrity of the applicant's representatives who have shown that they are very compliant to ensure that that happens. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, I didn't go through everything.
Can we ask them,
Go ahead.
can
I
we
didn't
ask
go
them to
through the
submit the
wrap.
lighting?
If they submit the lighting, then we have to reopen and have another hearing.
No, I mean submit it as soon as it is done. Like, put the lighting, take
Oh.
measurements as soon as you're done with the lighting and give it to us. Even before the period that we're gonna give them expires. So we make sure that there is no issue. It's like we make them check themselves.
Yeah. So here's a question, because the record's closed, right? So as this work? Because sometimes what we do is we say, you need to record the restrictive declaration before we release the resolution. But that's a little different because we've seen the restrictive deck, it's already in the record. So the only thing they're doing is going to the city clerk. So this is a little different.
There have been instances where the board has required documentation to be submitted after the fact. One question that I would have is whether it would be helpful to have a specific deadline, just so that as soon as possible is a little bit nebulous.
Yes, of course. So how about we say,
The cap would be,
Go
the
ahead.
cap would be the term. Let's say we're gonna say 2 years term and submit the lighting as soon as you're done before that 2-year
no,
cap.
no, I think instead we should have something where we know this applicant has done a really good lighting study on another
Yes.
site. They know how to do this,
Yes.
right? Lights on, lights off, right? So we could
Yes.
say, here it is January. We could say by the end of March, they submit their lighting study and their proposal for bringing the lighting levels down. Or maybe not a proposal. They submit their lighting study and a commitment to bring the lighting levels down to 0.
So a citation in the resolution,
Yeah.
a condition in the resolution.
Does that work, Kurt?
Sure. So the end of March. So,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
End of March, submit the lighting level study pursuant to the administrative code, administrative notice. And then a commitment, which includes a commitment to bring the levels to 0 along the residential property lines.
Okay, and the short leash is for 2 years or 3 years?
What do we think? I could go either way. Commissioner, Vice Chair Shanda?
Sorry. I think 3 years, they have so much work to do. They have to do some improvements, right? There are still some work. So 3 years seems like a reasonable time frame to spread out their expenses and everything put together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm okay with that. I don't know if they have a lot of improvements. They're building an addition to that
Yeah,
building.
that
It's
is
not
true.
a lot, but they need a building permit. They could certainly do it within the 2 years, but I don't have a problem with 3. So, okay, let's hear from others though.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
would the condition of obtaining a certificate of occupancy by that point instead of imposing a term suffice? In other words, if they were in compliance, then they're fine and they get their C of O. And if they don't, they have to come back.
yeah, but how would we check if they're in compliance? That's a part of, the CO has nothing to do with, Commissioner Otley Brown hasn't spoken, go ahead.
We could say that you must submit your CO to us by this date, and if it isn't received by us, then we automatically schedule a hearing for you, because you'll be considered to not be in compliance. That would be a way of saving them time and energy.
Okay, so the thing about COs though, of course, is the buildings department isn't checking on whether, the lighting levels are at 0 at the property line. They're not checking whether the landscaping's maintained. That's not their role, right? So our version of compliance versus their version of code compliance is really a different thing. I do think, the CO should be gotten. So why don't we make that part of the condition as well? It's not a term, Carlo. They're just coming back to verify that they've done all of those things. And then we can send them off.
Okay, so the condition would be similar to the Appendix G waiver, where it's actually that they'll have to come back in 3 years for a compliance hearing, but it's not a 3-year term per
Yeah.
se.
Right, that's right. Okay. Okay. All right, Commissioner Sheta?
Yeah, I'm okay with 3 or 4. That's fine.
Okay, and Commissioner Shabeta?
I'm okay with that as well.
Okay. Good, all right. Oops, what happened?
I'm calling the vote.
Yeah, sorry.
So the motion to grant, Chair Perlmutter,
I,
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
oops, that was a little premature. I didn't realize I had conditions.
Oh, sorry. I thought your silence meant you were finished. I'm sorry.
Sorry. What do we do now? There were conditions. Maybe what do I do? Just tell you what they are? I don't know what to do. Do we have to
Should we
reopen?
reopen
I guess.
to accept the conditions?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let me motion to reopen, Chair Perlmutter, Vice Chair Chanda,
Yes.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta. It's Monday, people.
Yeah. Monday
Aye.
after a very stressful prior week, it was very hard to concentrate last week. Let me tell you. So the conditions, the proposed conditions on this motion to grant are, as I said, the field measurements of lighting levels according to the admin notice and adjust the levels to 0.0 at the residential property lines. Ensure the side of the block wall around the dumpster that faces the neighbor is stuccoed and painted, demonstrated with photos when they come back for the compliance hearing. They said that it was, but they didn't have any photos that demonstrated that. And in general, to maintain the fencing, planting, asphalt, and wall finishes, both on the building and on any of those masonry property walls in good condition, well painted and clean. Okay. The council
That's it?
get that? Yeah, I want to make sure our council got that because they have to take the notes. Yeah, Chase finger thumbs up. Okay. All right, that's it. Everybody okay?
Now, to the motion to close,
Aye,
Chair Perlmutter,
aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
We can't hear you. Say it again.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion, thank you. So the motion to approve, Chair Perlmutter,
So this is to grant on condition. Yes.
sorry, grant onto commission, sorry.
Okay. Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Number
Item
one.
number 9, 2018-102A, 241 Grand Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. This case was first submitted to the agency in June of 2018 and was last heard in October 2019 and adjourned 4 times since. Prior to the last scheduled hearing in December, we received an adjournment request stating that the applicant is waiting to hear from DOB. It seems to me that the application was prematurely submitted and has not been prosecuted for over a year. So I would like to move to dismiss for lack of prosecution. That is no prejudice. They can file whenever they finally have all of their ducks in a row. So
Chair Perlmutter? Aye. Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown? Can you repeat that, Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 10, 2018-142BZ, 204-2346 Road, Queens.
Okay, I checked and I believe the discrepancies in the statement of facts versus the plans have been cleaned up. Anybody else who had, I think it was Commissioner Otley Brown had observed that there were discrepancies, so I'm right?
They cleared it.
Okay, great, thank you. And what I was comparing it to was the last set of drawings that were submitted, which were June 2nd, 2020. There were no drawings submitted subsequent to that, so it was really just a statement of facts matching those June drawings. We did receive one complaint letter from the Auburndale Improvement Association that acknowledged that there is no longer parking on the subject site of equipment, these big trailers and things like that, and storage of supplies. But that the trailers that had been parked on the site are now parked on the street, which is not permitted. They're commercial trailers. So we did reach out to DOT enforcement, I think as fast as we could via a 311 complaint. And I think, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they must have done a drive-by and didn't find anything, right?
No,
So
it was closed. The complaint was closed.
Right. So obviously a 311 complaint is not the way to go. We're going to see if we can in future develop a liaison with DOT enforcement, or if that's NYPD enforcement, so that we can call these into an actual person as opposed to going into potential ether. They probably did do a drive-by, but they drove by the site itself and not where the vehicle is parked, you know, something like that. So, anyway, I recommend to the Auburndale Improvement Association that the community board and Auburndale itself are probably in a better position to follow up on these kinds of issues, because they can keep at it and they're the ones checking the site. And community boards usually have a direct liaison with someone at DOT. In fact, people come to the community boards to give presentations from DOT. So I think that that's probably the best way of dealing with it. And to note also, these vehicles are not owned by this applicant. They're owned by the applicant's neighbor. This applicant submitted a letter explaining the relationship that he had with this neighbor and apologizing for any trouble caused to the neighborhood. So I don't have any other issues with this, and I'd like to make a motion to grant on condition that the site during the pre-construction phase be maintained free of all storage of any materials and parking of any kind. But I hopefully will start construction soon, and so you'll start seeing like a backhoe or something like that on the site. So anyway, so that's my motion. Commissioner Shanda, Vice Chair Shanda.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Commissioner Shetta.
I have nothing additional. I'm fine with it.
Okay, and Commissioner Shabeta.
I'm okay with that as well.
Okay, so then motion to grant on that condition.
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Shefa?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
You're muted.
Aye.
Mhm.
Okay. Item number 11, 2019-296BZ, 8488 Franklin Street, Manhattan. Are we deferring this?
No,
We got it?
we have an LPC sign off on the application.
Oh, okay, good.
Finally.
You know, it's a full submission. It's both the certificate of appropriateness. It's all the drawings. It's like, wow, yay. Okay, so we finally have the sign off. And so that's that. So I'd like to make a motion to grant on condition, and the condition is that is fire department's condition that a fire alarm be installed. I believe it was there. I see it here. Condition on fire alarm install.
Okay, can I call it? Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown, Commissioner Otley Brown,
Say it again.
Is there a problem with my computer or
your audio, for some reason, I didn't hear you. Maybe it's me, I don't know.
I gotta check because it's saying it's 93%.
Maybe up your mic on your computer.
Yeah, I did. It was at 93%. I upped it to 100.
Okay, that made all the difference.
Oh, okay, cool.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Item number 12, 2020, 23BZ, 2807 Jackson Avenue, Queens.
There was nothing outstanding on this, right? Oh, they showed the acoustical information on the drawings, very detailed. Okay, so then I'd like to make a motion to grant.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll commence with the continued hearing items. Item number 13, 80361BZ, 1460 Highland Boulevard, Staten Island. Please remember, this is a review session. No public testimony.
Second. Just scrolling down, give me a second. Okay. We have fire department letter of no objection. Some requested changes were made to the drawings, but I see that many issues weren't addressed, and I actually don't understand why, because it's usually, this applicant usually is more systematic in their response. We asked for clear photos of the site going all the way around the perimeter. And when I say that, that's you look at the perimeter itself and you photograph it, and then you turn around and you walk around the entire site and you photograph inward. That wasn't provided. We also directed that the lumen levels be determined by field measurements, since the levels based on modeling were not convincing and the site is adjacent to residential properties, and we didn't receive this. Instead, the identical lumen spread drawing was submitted with only the heights of the lights indicated. So I didn't understand the purpose of that. We didn't ask for just the heights of the lights. We asked for, we spoke about, I think 3 commissioners spoke about field measurements. So, and frankly, this is only holding up our review. The photos we do have actually clearly show that the pole lights are too high and light is spilling into adjoining property. So the field measurements need to be taken as directed by the administrative notice. This turns out to be an amendment to the original application. Since the request is to install an 8-foot by 18-foot by 12-foot high tire enclosure, or 13-foot high, depending on whether you read one drawing or the other drawing. We had spoken about the need to amend the application to reflect this and the convenience store. The previously approved plans did not show a convenience store, so they were supposed to have kind of refiled as both an extension of time and an amendment, and they didn't do that, unless I'm missing a subtlety of our filing process. The landscaping plan is missing all of the information we usually ask for. This is confusing, since the applicant's representative should really know by now, but our project managers should never be accepting landscaping drawings that don't have all of the information, which is details of the landscaping, of the planting bed, all of the landscaping articulated in a sense, specified, how many trees, the spacing, what type of trees, the size of the planting beds from front to back and their depth. The planting bed at the rear should be at least 6 feet front to rear with concrete curbs all the way around to discourage the storage of tires and trash at the rear and to allow staggered planting of arbor vitae or equivalent, some kind of tall, bushy evergreen, planted at a minimum of 4 feet high that will grow to at least 8 feet high to create a dense buffer for the residences behind. And as I said, we need section details of the planting beds with curbs. And just to, again, I hope the project managers are listening because they may not know this. And it seems that the engineering and architecture applicants that we sometimes get also don't know this. There's a difference between a tree ball installation and a planting bed. A tree ball installation is just like how deep to dig the hole to drop the tree into and how to stake it. And that's assuming the tree is sitting in a field or, in a suburban garden. This is the creation of a planting bed. So the drawings have to show the way that the curb will be installed to retain the soil inside of the bed. And then you show the plants and you show the depth that it's going to be dug to, which isn't so obvious in New York City, the depth of the digging. So the existing planting at the side is shown in the drawings with, quote, existing planting, unquote, and existing fence with privacy slats, whereas the photos belie that reality. Potted plants, which is what's shown, are not acceptable here. They need to install a densely planted buffer of arbor vitae to grow 8 feet high minimum. The privacy slatting needs to be installed and must be at 100%. I don't know if there's privacy slatting, but at the most it's 50%. The 2 vacuum stations have now been shown to be moved away from the residential buildings at the rear, and now they're adjacent to the building on Highland Boulevard that looks residential, but apparently is an office building, but it really looks like a house. And so I just want to check everyone is okay with that, because sometimes we just tell them to take out the vacuum and leave the air pumps. So Vice Chair Shanda.
Okay. Yes, I had similar comments with regards to the landscaping. I also had another question, and that is when I looked at the initial proposal, it showed an existing dumpster showed that the existing dumpster was going to be located inside the tire rack that was proposed in the rear. Now, the revised plan, while it shows the relocated tire rack being from the rear to the side lot line, I do not see the location of the dumpster identified. So maybe that's an omission, mistake. So if that could be included. And yeah, and I have no additional comments. Rest are fine.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. When I was reading my notes, I skipped over the paragraph about that. So I want to say the previous set of plans showed an 8 by 32 by 18 enclosure, and the proposed is 8 by 18. So I'm not sure why is there a difference in the 2 enclosure lengths? And then again, where does the trash dumpster go? Thank you for reminding me about that. Commissioner Ali Brown.
I was focused on the location of the tire storage racks and the PVC fence enclosure, and being that it was moved to the right side of the building away from the residences, I'm fine with it. And I'm also fine with the vacuum and air stations being relocated to the southern lot line because it's adjacent to commercial. I have no issues with it, and I'm more concerned about what might happen should we have to remove them and then have to bring it back. So I don't want an operator to be out of compliance if it's not necessary.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah. Well, that was not about the vacuum. That was about
the air.
and corrected, mea culpa. I see Vice Chair Shanda's hand up. I'm going to keep going around the room. Commissioner Shanta?
Yeah, the only thing additional I have is the trash enclosure. Didn't we ask them to make it not open to sky? like put something on top, so if somebody's like in the second floor in the adjacent residences, he's looking down, he can see that, I'm sorry, the tire enclosure. That tire enclosure, like open with tires in it.
Ah,
I recall that we directed them not to make it open to sky.
so
I put it in my notes.
yeah, so I think my notes were more like enlarge the building to include a place for the tires. And instead what they're proposing probably is just a fenced enclosure. Let's
Yes,
see.
that was proposed last time, and we said if you want to do so, do not even make it open to sky.
Right. So, yeah, it's a good point. Right, it's a good point. And you know, the way it's like we're always between like a rock and a hard place on these kinds of situations. What really should be happening is these buildings should be built sufficient in size to handle the things that the business needs, right? Which in this case is tires. What ends up happening is they move these trailers onto the sites, which are these temporary structures that are not intended to be like that. And then they put all their stuff in there, and then we're confronted with, what do we do with this trailer? It's not even supposed to be there, right? So maybe what we could do is direct them to find some sort of an enclosure that has a roof on it for the trash instead of fencing like this. Because by the way, the fencing, we know, we've talked about this in the last few months, that those chain link fences with the privacy slats are horrible. They're horrible looking and they don't last. So very soon after, you can see what's being hidden there. They're really not a good solution. And we have another application today where they replaced on the trash enclosure the two usual chain link fences with steel doors. And it's such a difference. It's such a quality difference. So I think that what we really should be doing at the BSA is figuring out what is the design standard for these things and have them just do that. We need a little help from architects because they need to be researching what's legal and so on. But yeah, so I think we could direct them to create a trash enclosure. I mean, both the trash and the tire enclosure to be something that has a roof on top and is a more substantial structure than just a fence. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shivetta?
Thank you, Chair. I do like the idea of the enclosed tire and trash enclosure. I had similar comments with regard to lighting and landscaping. My only other comment would be perhaps we can put a notice to, even though the side is commercial, it's I'm not too worried about the vacuum because I believe that is a laundromat or a cleaning service. But I do think that the major problem generally happens with the vacuum is that the person in the vehicle will be playing loud music or something, and that's what we generally get complaints about. So maybe some sort of notice on the wall or near there about being mindful of neighbors, music not to be played while using the facilities.
That could be that's a good idea, right?
Every once in a while, I have one.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I mean, we have, interestingly, it's the operators of the vehicles who present often the biggest nuisance to the neighbors, not the operator of the business, which is sad and ironic. So
I think we have a lot of testimony before the board about that being the exact issue. So I'm thinking that like the drive-throughs and when we have vehicles, we might want to put some notices up and maybe something within their operational plan that suggests that they were going to tend to ensure that these vehicles would be mindful of the neighbors.
Right. Good. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Shanda?
I agree with Commissioner Shibata's recommendation with regards to the putting the sign up. That was one of the things for which I had raised the hand, and also that I didn't follow up on the proposal. You had the location of the airbag. I'm fine with the location of the airbag, with what Commissioner Shibata had said, having the sign to prevent any further noise pollution generated from the vehicles parked there. With regards to, I was looking through my notes as to our conversation, discussions regarding, should the tire rack area be enclosed either inside the building or enlarging the building. I think we had discussed that, and then there was a question that was raised whether that would be within the permitted, the enlargement allowance, and by enclosing it, does that then get counted into the floor area? So I vaguely remember that was raised. So I'm just kind of I maybe our Mr. Costanza can clarify that.
Well, it might get included, but I don't think that we're at the limit on the size, right? It's a 13,000 square foot lot in a C21. And the building is 1614 square feet. So looks like they have room to spare, right?
Okay.
It's different when you're kind of crashing up against exceeding the floor area, but that's not the case most of the time with these gas stations because they have so little lot coverage.
So if they do enclose the structure, which is a temporary structure, not a solid structure, then they may not have to go to DOB for permits, but would it still get counted in the floor area?
So I don't know if it's a temporary structure. You know, the definition of temporary is that I think that it doesn't have footings, right? But even a wall has footings. So, you know, for instance, when they did that little trash enclosure that we're talking about later with the steel doors, those are significant walls that were built around that enclosure. It's just that it doesn't have a roof, right? So that the definition of floor area or of a floor, 4 walls and a roof, right?
Right.
So I don't know that temporary goes to floor area because you could do the same with the word greenhouse. They're supposed to be temporary, but they always count towards floor area. So, but I think that we need to be coming up with better solutions for these kinds of things that are not encouraging them driving a trailer onto the site. So if the solution to their problem is this, and I'm curious whether whether the dimensions are actually some sort of trailer, or because a trailer wouldn't be okay. You know, this 8 by 18 by 12, is that the dimension of a trailer? Sort of sounds like one. Or 8 by 32 by 18. There's something magic about the 8, which is a trailer width, right? So just letting them know it can't be a trailer. It has to be an installed structure. Okay. Okay.
Move on? Move on?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 14, 52871BZ, 133-40, 150th Street, Queens.
Okay. They had originally requested an adjournment here, which, hold on a second, let me scroll down to my, oh, yeah. Which I denied because the application has been at the agency for 1.5 years. With 1 dismissal warning already sent out as part of that. And the site is in a state of noncompliance and illegality. I don't think we actually sent a notice to the owner for the next hearing. We should send a notice to the owner. Owner must always attend the hearings. Actually, you know, I'm considering that a lot of the times the reason these applications don't move forward is because the owners don't attend the hearings. And these applications cost the owner a lot of money. Yeah, hi, Jelly, go ahead.
We did tell the applicant via email, are you requesting a letter, a formal letter be sent to the owner?
Well, no, I mean, we did this on another application. That's why I'm saying we demanded another owner on another case appear. So I'm thinking that on the case where the owner has not been in attendance, we should be sending letters to the owner that they need to appear on these cases where there's non-compliance and it keeps getting adjourned, right? So the owner should appear. They have to understand that we can actually be responsible for eliminating their rights to operate a business here, a commercial business. So a commercial activity here. So so they need to attend and they need to tell us what they're doing to respond to all of our issues. Last at the hearing sorry, our last hearing on this was, the first hearing. So we haven't had any other hearings on this, right? Our first hearing was in June and it was adjourned in October, and there hasn't been any movement on responding. So that's really all on this because we didn't get any submissions. And applicants should also therefore never assume that just because they request an adjournment, they will get one, especially in cases where you have ongoing non-compliances that affect the community. Okay.
God bless.
Thank you.
Okay, move on.
Yes.
Item number 15, 38985 BZ, 2090 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
So I'm a little confused about representation here. Submissions were made by Eric Palatnik's office, whereas this has been represented by, I believe, Walter Gorman's office. There's no owner's authorization indicating.
Yeah, they did submit it.
I didn't find one in the folder. I looked, but I didn't find it. So, but I'm a little confused. So if you have an owner's authorization, please share. And there were confusingly several duplicative submissions, and I don't know why. Like they kept submitting the same thing over and over again, like 3 or 4 times. The trash enclosure door, that's the one that I was talking about, was replaced with a solid steel door. I think this may be the way we should proceed going forward at the BSA, that no more chain link fences to function as doors, which just don't work and don't hold up and look terrible. It's a sturdy improvement over those rickety fences. And that the owner has represented that the asphalt will be seal coated in the spring in conjunction with the installation of the planting. That should be a condition to our moving forward. I still didn't see planting bed details and details of the trash enclosure, although the enclosure is installed. I would like to see a drawing of the trash enclosure with information about those steel gates so that we can have that on for sort of moving forward and maybe even be able to reference it for other applications. The details are needed to inform future boards about what to expect for replacement and repairs. As I mentioned at the last hearing, the tree pit detail is not the same as a planting bed. That's what I said on a prior case. A tree pit assumes the tree is surrounded by soil on all sides, basically planted in a field. The planting beds are of a certain front to back dimension with curbs to prevent the soil from spilling onto the asphalt and to show adequate depth to support the ball of the plant, the shrub or the tree. There seems to be a lot of confusion about this among the architects and engineers who appear before us, who clearly don't have landscaping experience. We may have to provide a sample detail to show what we mean by this. So for project managers who have applications where there's really good drawings of the landscaping that includes details, please show them to me and maybe we can find some details that we can use as samples so that people will understand what we mean by this. I'm surprised it's such a mystery to everyone, but it is. Okay. Those are my comments. Vice Chair Shanda?
Madam, before we move on, I did see the affidavit of ownership and authorization that was submitted as part of the December 23rd submission.
Which says,
Which
Eric.
said- Yes, yes.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I did not have any other questions, yeah, and I'm okay with the conditions that you're proposing.
Okay. Commissioner Otley Brown?
I have no additional comments.
Okay. Commissioner Sheta?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Commissioner Shabeta?
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, go on. Item number 16. 82586 BZ, 1703 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay. Still scrolling. A lot of notes. Okay. Okay. This application has been revised to hold what is described in the certificate of occupancy as, quote, the maximum permitted occupancy, unquote, at 850 persons, and to legalize the mezzanine additions and conversion of the dwelling unit for uses bridal suites and storage that would not create an increase in occupancy since not simultaneous. To be clear, these bridal suites are not to be used for bridal showers or little private parties or anything that could be operated independent of the event in the banquet halls that would increase building occupancy. That needs to be a condition of approval. I'm really uncomfortable with the footnote that was dropped by applicant's counsel in the cover letter and the subtle language in the parking study that seems to be skirting this issue. There is to be no increase in occupancy, which would lead to an increase in parking demand and exceed the allowable limits in the current certificate of occupancy. Uses of those additional spaces are to be non-simultaneous. To be clear, the 1987 resolution refers to the occupancy of the building, and the 1997 approved drawings don't show occupancy counts. To quote the 1987 resolution, it says, whereas there will be no increase in the permitted occupancy of the building, and whereas the owner has indicated that there will be sanitation pickup on certain days and off-site valet parking for 75 cars. So that's the statement from then. And the 1998 certificate of occupancy shows occupancy limits by floor, not by space. The basement has 150 maximum number of persons permitted, and the first floor has 700 maximum number of persons submitted. So I don't know how to say this any other way. So the request is therefore to hold the parking lot at 65 spaces, and a parking study was provided that concludes ride sharing reduces the need for the additional 10 spaces that the board required. It is obvious that ride sharing must be having an impact on personal car utilization, especially to events like a banquet where alcohol consumption is likely. Revised drawings were submitted. I'd like clarification on the two means of egress from the cellar banquet hall and from the small hall on the first floor. So in other words, do one of those egress drawings. How do you get out of those two spaces? The section provided excludes the basement. It needs to include the basement. It's a section. At the last hearing, we asked for a restrictive declaration to be recorded against the parking lot and the banquet hall to tie the two together for required parking. We didn't receive that. The CO, so we need that. Provide us the restrictive declaration. The CO should have the conditions of approval listed, and there's a CO right now that has a lot of conditions, which I wanted to just kind of go over with the board members. It says this variance be limited to a term of 20 years, that there be no increase in the maximum permitted occupancy of 850, that signs conform to the CL district, commercial district regulations. I don't know what that means. That adequate acoustical and vibration damping be provided to insulate abutting residential uses from possible adverse noise impacts. That the facility meet the requirements for an N-2 ambient noise quality zone at abutting residential areas. I frankly don't know what that means. That it might be something in the M district special performance standards. That a smoke detector be installed in the residential portion. Obviously, that would not be included because we're taking out the residential. That there be sanitation pickup on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, no earlier than 8 a.m. That there be no double parking or any other obstruction of vehicles, traffic. That there be off-site valet parking for no less than, they say 75, we would be changing that to 65 vehicles, and that these conditions appear on the C of O adopted by the board. So does anybody have, I'm going to go around the room, any comments about those conditions? Because we could continue them. I also, just to pick up on the rest of my comments, just two more. The CO refers to a 429 square foot loading berth. Is there one? What looks like a loading berth on the basement plan is labeled electrical closet. So is there no longer a loading berth? The CO for the parking lot also should refer to BSA calendar number and conditions of approval. The CO for the parking lot does say it's connected to the hall across the street, but it doesn't refer to any BSA approvals that is tying it back. So it needs to do that. And in terms of, okay. And Vice Chair Shanda.
So my first, I think it's a little correction that the applicant needs to do in the drawings. The drawings very clearly label every space and the use of those space, and but it does not show the enclosed refrigerated trash enclosure. I don't know if we had asked them to provide it or not, but I think our standard is going forward that always has to be provided. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. I think there is space for it because there are bunch of storage rooms downstairs in the cellar. And maybe one of them is meant to be that, but was not clearly indicated in the plan. And with regards to the certificate of occupancy, yes, there's a lot of old carryovers of conditions, so we do need to update it, and especially the note regarding the noise attenuation. It should be consistent with what the underlying zoning regulation conditions are of the M district today in the zoning resolution, and should be carried over.
Mm-hmm.
Unless this one is more restrictive than what's already there.
I don't know what it is. Maybe
Yeah,
an N2 ambient noise quality. I don't know what that is. Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm fine.
Ms. Molly Brown?
They corrected their financials. They corrected the occupancy to 850 people. They corrected the as of right soft costs down and reduced it down to 8,570. I'm fine with that. They corrected the math for the proposed soft costs, and that brought those up to 628,702. So there really is nothing else I have to comment on. I'm fine with the application as it is.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Sheta?
Thank you, Chair. I'm fine with the application with the conditions you discussed before. I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Shibeta?
I'm also satisfied with the application, and I was wondering if the board would be interested in closing with condition on receiving the declaration that the chair requested and the changes that on the plans that Vice Chair requested.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether our council's okay with it because they've never seen the restrictive deck, but we could ask them if they're okay with it, then yes.
Great.
Okay.
I'm just sympathetic to this being a business that I imagine is severely affected by COVID, and the financial circumstances would continue to come back. I wouldn't want that to be any more of a burden on them.
But I don't even think they're able to operate at all now, right?
I don't think they are. I certainly don't think they are. I don't think they will be till March. I think that, although I do think that appearing before the board on a regular basis is probably increased. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right, good, thank you.
Move on. Okay, item number 17, 2191 BZ, 2407, 2417 Linden Boulevard, Brooklyn.
Okay, we last heard this application in May with 2 adjournments since. A request to withdraw the application was initially filed in response to this hearing deadline. Board staff reached out to applicant's counsel and prepared a notice to appear letter to the owner that was sent on January 4th. Directing owner to appear at this hearing and advising the owner that withdrawal would not be accepted since the site requires a variance to operate and is in a state of noncompliance. Staff directed the owner to appear at this hearing. Owner's counsel subsequently submitted a letter retracting their withdrawal request, but there's been no submission. So there's nothing to discuss about this except that the site is really problematic. And so we wanted to explain to the owner that they have to take this seriously or they're going to lose their right to operate as a business. Okay. Anybody want to add anything? Otherwise we can move on. Okay.
Okay, that concludes the public review session. We will now commence with the public hearing. We are now proceeding with the public hearing for January 11th, 2021, 10 a.m. session. The Zoom webinar ID number is 976-5745-5097. Oh, what happened there? Okay, the first item is special order calendar continued hearings. Item number 13, 80361 BZ, 1416 Highland Boulevard, Staten Island.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
I have 2 people who will be joining me, Andrew Stewart from High Point and Jim Perry from British Petroleum.
I see. So say those names, who it is again? Oh, Jim.
Andrew Stewart from High Point
Mhm.
and James Perry from British Petroleum.
Okay, so we're waiting for Mr. Stewart to call in.
He should have a 516 number.
Okay.
If you see one.
I thought it was renamed to Beyond Petroleum now.
What?
I thought it was renamed to Beyond Petroleum.
High Point.
Silent laugh.
Bad.
I can start without them, but I think we all need to swear in. So
Well, we could swear him in when he speaks because we don't know how much longer. Have you
I
texted?
spoke to him on the phone 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Do you want me to swear Elise in? Go ahead.
Yeah, why don't you just do that? Yeah.
Okay. You affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions.
I do, thank you.
Please state your name and proceed.
Elise Fullader from Eric Polanic, PC. So I guess firstly, last time we discussed whether this was an amendment or not, and we can turn to the plans again. But the existing proposed plans, it's not a full convenience store. It's the same as it was before. It's a small snack shop attendant area that's attached to the service base.
So I'm confused because the drawings themselves now are showing the TPPN compliance.
We always do that now with any small sales area. Every single time, if there's a small attendant sales area attached to the service base, we've been showing compliance with TPPN.
And the layout is different now for this space than it was before. Because, you know, always with service stations, you had some small thing where they sold, you know, oil and bags or whatever, right? But
the previously approved plans don't have the layout on them, at least from the ones I'm looking at.
The previous have the layout, and it shows a much smaller thing, shop or something. And the thing that makes a convenience store is, does it sell soda? Does it sell, you know, what is it?
Generally, we haven't, if it has like a small attendant area next to it, and it's even maybe interiors have minorly changed, this is typical, and we didn't file for an amendment because it's not a whole convenience store. It's just a restroom with a 280 square feet of sales area.
Right, but a convenience store is a place where you go in and you get your soda and, you know, whatever, right? A shop that's related to the automotive repair is one where you buy windshield wiper fluid and
that's more akin to that in this situation.
So what you're saying is they don't sell.
I think they sell a few snacks, but they're attached to their sales shop for the service base.
I'm going to defer to Carlo for this one if he's able to respond, but yeah, I don't know. Okay. Okay, let's go on.
Okay. So I guess we have to decide if it is an amendment. And then we didn't file for an amendment because of that. And we also didn't file for an amendment because last time when we talked about the tire rack, each commissioner, we reviewed the tape, kind of had different ideas. So we came back to you to propose a new idea to see if it's something that the board would consider. So we didn't come back with all the pictures and everything because we want to come to a final conclusion about what everybody wants, and then we can do a full package of everything everybody's looking at, but we didn't find that there was a final conclusion.
All right. Okay. So, but since we don't have much in the way of information other than its size, we don't know what that thing is.
It's a fence enclosure, no top, and we wanted to propose fence. We're not interested in proposing making the floor area larger. So we don't want to add to the building. So if you're not open to this type of fence enclosure, then we might not have one for the tire rack at all. The operator really, really wants it, and we moved it to the commercial side to see if it's something the board would be open to because it's important to his business.
So this idea of not being open to, we're plagued with this idea, with the reality that the tires end up becoming really an eyesore on the site. And when you don't have the top, the tires then can pile to as high as you can stack them, which is high, right? Way higher than 18 feet, or 13 feet, which is what's being shown here. Mr. Stewart just joined, if Tony, if you want to swear him in, or unless he's not going to speak.
I'm here. I've been listening. I'm sorry, I had a little trouble accessing the
Well,
call.
we'll be swear you in. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Okay.
So we need to come up with a better solution about how to deal with tires. They can't just be sort of, you know, if it's stacked 5 high, then it's hidden. And if it's stacked 20 high, it's completely not hidden.
Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this in a rack? Aren't all the tires in a rack? They're not just stacked.
Yeah, there would be metal racks that they stand up or and adhere to attach to the side of the building for support, and then the enclosure would just be to screen them from view.
So to screen them from view. So that's the other issue that Sheta was reminding us about. Screening, people can see into these
Well,
spaces.
that was the intent of why we moved it, is because there was a residential in the rear, and you said, well, we don't want the residents to be able to see in. So then we moved it to the commercial side so residences wouldn't be seeing into the tire rack.
Why can't there be some sort of a top on it? Like, what's the big thing about a top?
Doesn't that create floor area?
Well, not necessarily. So it's a fence enclosure. I'm not sure.
Typically, they wouldn't put a top on something like this. It might cause don't want it to necessarily cause drainage issues. You have stormwater running off. I mean, it's obviously drainage on site to accept it, but you're kind of changing that dynamic a bit by putting a top on it. And it's something that it's nothing that's stored inside that needs to be protected from the elements, so they don't typically wouldn't put a top on something like this.
But we're talking about also the aesthetics of it, right? We're focused a lot on the aesthetics, the fact that this is in a residential neighborhood, right?
Yeah, but the residences at this point can't see into.
Wait,
Sorry.
let me finish. And you don't need to have a top that's completely closed. You can have a top that allows for drainage and air circulation. Another reason for the top is it prevents the rodents from getting in, because I'm assuming, though I don't know yet, that the trash enclosure is going in there. So if you have a top that has just a sort of a grid, then it can rain inside, it can ventilate, but the grid is too small for rats to crawl inside. So I actually don't, other than the fact that it's not the way it's done in suburban situations. We're not in a suburban situation, and we'd like you to come up with a solution that we can use going forward for other things like this. So go back and figure out something like that. The PVC fencing that you're showing now, I remember there's a drawing of that, may or may not accommodate that idea.
Can we ask the location and the concept right now of the PVC enclosure on the side of the building there? Is there any objections to it being installed in place there if we can come up with some sort of a top to it, as we're talking about? If we can, if it's not going to be entertained in that location, then that affects our decision going forward with what we want to propose. So.
Okay, so the commissioners were okay with having moved that stuff to that side, but the question is, it's much smaller than what was originally proposed, and so I'm understanding why, and also what happens to the trash enclosure.
So the reason it's smaller is, one, you're going from the back of the building to the side of the building. Obviously, you have a shorter frontage on that side of the building. But also, if you look at the building elevations, it's on sheet Z005. That side of the building, there is a door, an exterior door, access door at the back corner of the building. So we wouldn't want to put the racks and the enclosure in front of that door. So we're limiting it to that area shown on the site plan.
Okay, those are the practical reasons it's smaller, but what about the practical, what it's supposed to be holding? Where does the trash enclosure go?
So it would probably be a rolling dumpster I believe they have on site. So there should be sufficient room to roll a dumpster within that enclosure as well. We can confirm that, but there should be sufficient room as well, because the racks don't extend the full length. Obviously, you have to walk into it, have enough area to access to pull tires off the racks within the enclosure, and therefore we could have the rolling dumpster in that location as well.
Okay, so when you redo the drawing, can you please show the racks in place and the dumpster in place, and indicate how many tires are stored on the racks that you're showing?
Okay.
And also, what's the point of access? Where's the opening?
There's a pair of double gates shown on the front of it, parallel with the front of the building there. There's an existing drain inlet in front of it.
So the long side.
Yeah, no, the front end, the short end, the side facing Highland.
Okay, so in order to get higher, you have to roll the dumpster out?
You'd have to roll the dumpster out temporarily or push it further back to get some tires out, and then put it back as needed.
The fencing on the long side so that you can easily access the racks and not have, what normally happens is the dumpster's in the way, the dumpster gets rolled out and spends the entire day and night outside of the enclosure. So the idea would be that it would be kept in the enclosure.
Understood. And we can look at where the final access point would be. This is just where we had it based on what would typically be seen. But we can look at that.
Okay. So I think the most obvious would be to make it very clear where the dumpster goes versus where you access the tires. That way the guys aren't having to move stuff around in order to get to tires. I see Vice Chair Shanda's hand up and Chief Daly's hand up. So go ahead, Vice Chair Shanda.
Thank you. So the dimension of that side wall from the front to the door is 23 feet 4 inches as per drawing number Z006. And what is being proposed, that enclosure length is 8 feet by 18 feet. So there is some room to enlarge it to make sure that there would be a much more permanent placement of a trash enclosure without it having to be moved in and out to access the tire rack. Or maybe you have a separate entrance from the back for the tire rack, and the front entrance is for the enclosure. And that way the you have complete free access for both of those operations without the concern that legitimate concern that we have raised and Madam Chair has raised, and we have seen that happen. And it's no fault of anybody, but it does happen, and you're in a rush and you end up leaving it and forgetting it, and then it becomes more of a permanent solution. So we are looking for a permanent solution. I think it's very doable without any additional cost, and I hope you will look into it in providing that enclosure. I mean, maybe it requires your parking space number 2 to be moved somewhere else, but I think it can be done.
Okay, we will certainly look into that.
Okay. And Chief Daly, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the enclosure for the tire storage, I agree with the board, to clean up the site. I would not recommend a roof over this enclosure, since this fencing area is adjacent to the building. It will be difficult for the fire department to apply a foam substance onto the tires if they were in the event of a fire. If we could have it open to the air, it'd be great. So we could just pour out chemicals over the fencing. So if I could request that the board not put a roof on this enclosure.
What if there was a top instead of a roof? Something that could be lifted, but still with vents, still open, still like a grid enclosure.
Something like a chain link fencing?
Well, not chain link fence. I'm talking about on the top.
Right.
That has, let's just to throw out something like a perforated metal top. I'm not saying it metal, but a perforated metal top where there's perforations and allows for air circulation on a hinge so you could lift it up.
I would agree with that.
Like a lift.
If it's a metal of a metal material, or not PVC. I mean, the enclosure is PVC. That's also a petroleum product. But if the roofing can be open metal material, then I would have no objection to that. We can still get our water and chemicals to dissolve or to kill the fire in the event there's a fire in the tire rack. So
does the top need to lift, or it can be?
No. It can remain fixed.
Okay.
Now, the purpose is operations would arrive at the site. They can immediately put their foam solution together, start dumping water on the top of the enclosure. And while that's being done, other members can then open up the gate and then be able to pour water inside the tire rack area and the storage containers.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
So what you're saying though is PVC is not a great material to be using for this in the first place because it's yet another flame to the fire.
And that's the petroleum-based product as well, but we do live in an age of everything's made out of plastic, and which petroleum is used, and just make the best of it. But I think your recommendation of having a metal roof, I agree, to at least have air circulation in there. But if I can pour water and chemical foam on top of it, it'll be fine.
But I'm wondering in the realm of kind of inventing this enclosure because we're trying to figure this out. There are many kinds of enclosures that are made using metal, using corrugated metal, perforated metals, all kinds of things like that. I'm wondering if that may be a better solution for the entire enclosure using PVC so that we're not adding yet another combustible material to a place that's combustible.
Well, I agree with you there because, I've seen, these storage areas around, I've seen kids, they're the one pushing the dumpsters in and they just go right in and they're ready to destroy the fence. And of course, once they hit the PVC, it's going to break and it's going to, stay there for months and years and times, not being repaired. Yes, if we could get a material that is a non-combustible, other than PVC type of enclosure, that would be great. Especially in this case, the enclosure is right up against the building, and the wall, of course, is already a 2-hour rating, but now we're adding more fire to that wall that the rating may deteriorate even faster.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Stewart, so PVC is not the way to go. Some kind of a metal enclosure, but fixed, right?
Yeah, we can look at that definitely. Originally PVC was proposed as something that's more aesthetically pleasing to adjacent owners.
No. So jumping to something that's not aesthetically pleasing. I'm saying you go to both things. There's lots of really good looking metal product.
Understood.
Okay, so yeah. So the PVC actually isn't necessarily better looking because as Chief Daly said, it breaks very easily. It wears poorly under extreme sunlight conditions, all that stuff. So whereas with a metal enclosure, you can paint it. So it has a longer life. So please don't look for something that you would find hideous to live next to. Instead, look for something that is attractive. And that's why I keep going to perforated metal, which is really a great material because it breathes, it has circulation. So Vice Chair Shonda has her hand up.
I just want to know, we are also asking for, instead of the PVC fence along the wall, we are also asking that to be replaced with a metal one, right?
The fence along the wall.
Instead of the PVC fence along the side, we're also asking that be metal.
Yeah.
It's not just the top, both.
Yeah. So what we're saying is Chief Daly is concerned about the combustibility of the PVC, especially that it's up against a building. And so now we're looking at an entire enclosure that is metal, and it can be something that is modular. But I would say that I can see why a lot of businesses go then to those prefab trailers, which are not allowed to be permanently parked in a location. So this is sort of creating a permanent enclosure that's fixed to the ground, that's not a trailer, right?
Also, instead of Sorry, and also instead of having like a metal mesh over, if one doesn't need to be enclosed, we just want a roof so that the tire racks never go higher a certain height. One could articulate it with like trellises, metal trellis and things like that, spaced like you can have metal beams spaced every few, like a foot apart, so that it kind of prevents the tires from having to go over that height. That could be another way of doing it. This way it keeps it open.
So one of the things that I'm looking at, because I'm always focused on the trash, is something that also keeps out vermin. And mice is one thing, they can get into almost any size hole, but rats can't, right? So, so if it had small enough perforations that still allows for air circulations, it would also prevent rat infestation. And you know, a way of thinking about these enclosures going forward, like the 2021 BSA enclosure model kind of thing. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Next topic?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
Okay. So planting details. This architect knows what to do. He'll give you planning details. I guess I wanted to, I know we just brought this up, but I found the layout from before, and there was a sales area with lubritorium, and it's slightly, the restroom utility room area changed, but usually when we do new trash enclosures and we don't change anything substantial in the building, it's not an amendment. So I can call Carlo. What should we do?
No, Carl is the one who's the expert on this subject. So discuss with him whether it needs to be an amendment.
Okay. Because if it's an amendment, I need to know if we need to go back to DOB, and that complicates things much further.
Right, understood.
Yes, Elise, this is Carlo. Yeah, please reach out to me and we'll go over it. I just don't have all the facts before me right now to make a decision.
Okay. And then you asked about lighting, I believe, was the last. We'll give you photos around the perimeter now that we know how we're going about the site. And then the last is the lumens level. And if Jim, I don't know if he is able to speak, I saw him on, can explain to you, BP has been working really, really hard to figure out how to contract a lumen spread expert to do this study for you. And he's been working really hard on it. So I wanted him to speak on that for a second.
Okay, but just before we go to Mr. Perry, to be clear about the photos. Perimeter photos are, you walk with the camera systematically around looking at the perimeter, and then you turn around and you look at the building at the site, and you walk systematically around and you look at the site. So we have in photos a very clear understanding of what the conditions are. And then those photos are provided with a key plan that indicates exactly where the photos were taken from. And again, a reminder to our project managers, do not accept photos unless they are accompanied by a key plan. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Jim Perry. I work for BP. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the lighting plan, we've been working on that for
Sorry,
probably...
Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry,
Yes.
sorry. Let me sway you in because I don't.
Sworn in.
He was sworn in? Okay. Go ahead.
I
I'm
wasn't?
sorry.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. We've been working on the lighting plans for this site as well as a number of other ones. There are some complications as it relates to this because number one, it's kind of a new administrative requirement. So that's the one thing we're kind of dealing with. But we've contracted with a company to do it. There's some additional coordination that we're working through. We're going to have to shut down the site for a period of time. We have to get electricians out there. We have to make sure from a safety perspective, we have all the safety people there and make sure everything's barricaded off so people aren't driving in, our customers. So yeah, there's some details that we continue to work through on that. So I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware of all the details that relates to all this. So
thank you so much.
But just to undercomplicate what you're proposing to do, but I know you're a big corporation and corporations complicate things. What we're really looking for is at the perimeters that are shared with other properties, not the street, that you turn the lights off and you walk with one of those light meters, and at intervals, which are shown on the administrative notice, you take light meter readings at those. So it's not that you need to measure the entire site with all the lights off. You need to measure only those perimeter points at the heights that are shown on the notice. So it doesn't seem like your lights need to be off for very long. It's not like you're essentially going dark for 4 hours. I'd say you're going dark for 30 minutes at most.
Chair,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you remember the Starbucks we did together. That site you said to use as an example, you really liked it. That took 6 hours to complete, and Starbucks was closed that night.
So 6 hours to complete the entire measurement.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just talking about the time to complete the measurements for the perimeter, because the other.
No, that was the lighting for the perimeter. That's the intention, and they went around the perimeter to make sure that all lighting levels were what they needed to be, and that took 6 hours.
Really? With a
And
handheld meter? With a handheld light meter?
Yeah, I don't have it open right now, but we provided a cover letter that explains how the entire thing was done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Huh. A little surprised. Okay.
Yeah. It costs about $10K to do, and it took them 6 hours.
Wow. Okay. Huh. Maybe we should look again at how you're doing it, because it seems extreme. But all right.
We're just trying to follow your lead. So if someone could clarify for us, we would love to give something less, but that's what you asked for. So that's the difficulty we're dealing with all of the gas stations, because they're open 24 hours for gas, and it's a safety hazard, and we're not really sure what to do about that except for shut down the site.
Yeah, understood. Okay.
Why it's taking that long? I can take a measurement with my phone right now.
I guess if you would like me to have, if you'd like me to have someone testify of how the whole thing was done on another application sometime, maybe I can get that consultant to explain the way that it
Yeah, that would be interesting, because I'm having trouble understanding if we're just doing the perimeter, which is what we're concerned about.
And if they take time measuring distances between readings, let me say this, they don't need to like kill the measurements and make them like, they can even measure them with steps. Like if I make wide step, it's like a yard, 3 feet. So they can do it roughly like that. At the end of the day, we care about making sure that next to the property line, the readings are 0 or like slightly fraction. So it doesn't need to like to measure the grid beforehand and then go to each exact point and make the measurement there. It doesn't need to be done like that.
But in addition,
I'm not sure.
In addition to which, you don't need to turn the lights off until you've marked your points. So if you've marked your lights on, and then you turn the lights off when you're ready to take the readings, and you have one who's reading and the other who's writing, I actually don't, and maybe you don't even need.
I really don't want to speak to the process because I'm not the one who physically did it, but I think that I should get someone on here to explain how the whole thing works to make sure that the site is what you're asking for and is safe for everyone.
Okay, so anyway, let's proceed with what you're doing. Maybe we should have a call among staff so that you can discuss with the consultant, and staff can discuss what the process actually is, so we can fine tune it. I mean, the result was great with that Starbucks. It was very easy to understand, but perhaps it's an exaggeration of the methodology. I don't know. Okay. All right, let's move on, but continue to do what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. I think that is all of the comments, unless you think.
Yeah, I think that's it also. Okay, so let's go to the public.
This is 80361BZ, 1416 Highland Boulevard, Staten Island. Zoom webinar ID number is 976-5745-5097. Passcode is 858234. If you're dialing in, it's 646-558-8656. And you're here in the Zoom already. Raise your Zoom hand. It's *9. Am I right?
But there isn't anyone so far in the room waiting who's not associated with an application. So not this application. So.
How much time do you need?
Andy, how much time to redesign that dumpster? That seems like the biggest issue.
Well, if the lighting study would probably take longer than it would to redesign the dumpster and everything. So, yeah, how much time we need for the lighting study to get done? Yeah. I think that's the driving point right now.
And yeah, I guess it depends if you're meeting internally with staff to get back to us to do anything in particular.
No. Okay. Don't, just proceed. I don't want to.
Okay, I guess probably like a month or two, unless somebody disagrees with that.
Mr. Perry, who's doing the study? Mr. Perry, is that?
He's the one who is coordinating the study.
Yeah, we have New York Design doing the study.
Okay. So do you have any idea how much time you need?
You know, I would like to get at least 60 days because there's some things that are out of my control in terms of coordinating. So if you can give me 60 days, that should be enough.
So that's 60 days to submit the results.
Correct.
Right. And then in terms of the results, once you've got the measurements, then you'll know what it is you need to do with the lighting. So it'll include the proposal for what to do with the lighting.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, great. All right then. Thank you. No one called in on this. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Okay, next item is 52871BZ, 13340 150th Street, Queens.
Me and Jim again.
Okay.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
I do.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik PC. Unfortunately, we were hired through the architect, but Jim is on top of it now, and the lease has changed hands. So I just wanted him to discuss that briefly. But the site's now under control, and we know what we're doing with it. So, Jim.
Just to give you a little background, I think part of the confusion with this location is there's been a series of ownership changes throughout the years. I mean, I'm looking back on meeting minutes from 1972, and there was another ownership back then. So there was a series of ownership changes. We just recently became the owner of the location about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. So there were the predecessor only owned it for about a year, and then it changed hands before that. So I think that's part of the problem, is just the changes over time.
And we were hired through an architect. Sorry.
Who's we? We were.
Eric Palatnik PC.
No. We, the owner. He said we just became the owner.
Yeah, but I'm trying to explain how the levels of ownership, because it's complicated. So we were hired through the architect, and PMG was the owner. And there's Jim, am I correct? You leased through them?
Yes, we have a triple net agreement, a master lease with PMG, who is the fee owner of the property. Correct.
So he has the triple net lease through PMG.
But who is the triple net lessee?
BP.
Oh, okay. So you are the architect for BP?
I work for BP. I'm an employee for BP.
Okay.
Bowler was the architect, but they're not on the call. But my point, what I guess I was trying to say is we didn't start working with Jim until years into this application. Once he got involved. So I'm saying in the past year or 6 months, maybe, we've been working with Jim on figuring out what to do with this site. Because before that, BP wasn't who hired Eric Palatnik PC. So we weren't speaking through him.
So who, when did BP become the net lessee, triple net lessee of the site?
In 2017.
So that's 2 years.
Yeah,
So
2 or 3 years ago. Correct. Yep.
So we're dealing with this site that's got a lot of problems that has been owned for 2 or 3 years by the same owner.
Right. And we inherited all those issues. So we're, our intention is to clean up everything. We want this site to be in compliance. So we will do what we have to do to get it done.
Okay. So, so you're calling on behalf of BP, not just as their architect, right? Because we said that the owner had to attend. Are you representing then the owner?
Yes, through our triple net agreement, our master lease. Yes.
And just to clarify, he's not the architect on this project.
Yeah.
Representing.
I'm an employee. I'm an employee with BP.
Oh, okay. So I know, so you're not but you have this triple net lease, therefore you're responsible for everything.
That's correct.
Stand in the stead of the owner and with respect to the site.
That's
right?
correct. Yes.
So, so our problem is that this has been going on for a long time, right? This was submitted almost 2 years ago, and it was adjourned in October after only one hearing in the summer. So what's been going on? We had a lot of issues. Were you present at the last hearing to hear what those issues were?
I was not.
Okay, so,
Sorry.
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say that he wasn't present at the last hearing, but he's been working with PMG and Bowler in response to the last.
So, but what I'm confused about is why was it adjourned in October and what's going on to respond to our many, many issues of noncompliance?
Jim, do you want to speak on that or?
I can only tell you that the issues that I understand that are outstanding, we are moving forward on. There is landscaping issues that need to be put in. We're working through that. There were four or five other issues that we were working through. I can't remember all the details off the top of my head, but I know the landscaping part of it is moving forward. But if we want to talk about all the issues today, I'm more than willing to talk through with them, and we'll start working on them.
So what I don't really understand is it's been 6 months since we had a first hearing.
Yes.
And saying that we're working on it, but we don't get submissions of drawings. So I'm going to read my notes back from June.
Okay.
It's not going to be complete because I'm not necessarily taking dictation during the hearing, but we have videos of that hearing where we went through everything, right?
Sure.
So I'm just going to, so we had to have things that were, had to have things amended. So there was a problem, let's see. Well, I'll just start with this one. Because of lack of legends on the drawings, it's unclear what changes are being requested, and I had to rely on the statement of facts for that. The 1997 approved plans show a convenience store measuring 41 feet long and 25 feet deep, plus an approximately 13 by 13 masonry storage room. The proposed line drawing at BSA 04 that is not an acceptable floor plan and needs to be redone to match the level of detail on the 1997 plans shows a 41.8 wide and 26 foot deep building plus a 13 by 11 storage room with an unexplained hatched area, although the statement of fact states that that hatching denotes the sales area. The outside dimensions of the structure are essentially the same as the 1997 plans. So in other words, it's really hard to understand what it is that's being asked for, both in the drawings and in the statement of facts. BSA 05 shows that the landscaped area behind the building has been obstructed by a collection of new elements that were not approved in 1997, including a shed, storage unit, generator, and air station, none of which are dimensioned. These, along with changes in the signage areas, are the main differences that I was able to see on the drawings because it was so hard to understand the drawings. The photos and not necessarily acceptable changes. They were not approved. The photos are 3 years old that were submitted to us and need to be updated to show current conditions. 2020 Google imagery shows not one stick of landscaping remaining, and the lot to the rear that was depicted in 1997 as vacant under common ownership and covered in quote new hemlocks is instead covered with parking. This is in an R3A residential zoning district, and the use of that lot for parking is forbidden. The 2015 deed shows the site still under common ownership by Blue Hills Fuels, and it remains all Lot 1 in Block 12-116. The statement of facts states that the reason for the elimination of the second parking spot is to allow access to the air pump and the landscaped area. This is not the fact. The former parking space is the access point to the parking area that's illegal. One of the biggest discussions was about the illegal use of that adjoining piece of property that is on the subject site and has to be eliminated immediately. That's why 6 months later, we heard nothing from anybody about this illegal use. There also appears to be an active car wash operation going on the west side of the lot, which is not approved, not permitted. And I was surprised then that the applicant makes no mention of these facts. I'd like to hear again from the community board. All of these mentioned activities seem to have post-dated their resolution in 2017. So you were supposed to appear again before the community board.
Sorry, just to reach out about that. We called the community board and sent 3 or 4 emails with no response, but maybe I'll reach out to Tony and maybe she can help me along.
Okay. And then I have a comment from Vice Chair Shanda. While there may not be any grass there, there were weeds in that parking area that's supposed to be planted. Proof of service of initial application postdates the community board review. Not even sure that's allowed. We needed a compliance chart prepared. Obviously, the site is really out of compliance. The rear lot is paved instead of planted. Access to the paved area is only through the subject portion of the lot. So clearly this lot is involved in allowing illegal parking behind. She didn't see an air pump on her site visit. Regardless of what that site is being used for, it can't be used for illegal purposes. She didn't see parking there, but that's during COVID and maybe a shutdown, and so probably wouldn't have seen parking. There is also a physical connection with lots 8, 11, 12 that's owned by Cumberland. There isn't fencing between the vacant lot and the residential buildings adjacent. And she asks again, what is that space for? There are 2 car wash machines and an air vac machine next to the 2 curb cuts at the corner that probably blocks vehicular movement. The car wash machines along the side lot line can't be against a residential lot line if that will be developed as such, and it is a residential lot line. It needs drainage, and it doesn't have drainage if we're even to allow these car washes. There were lots of banners on the site that need to be removed or included in the analysis. And of course, there needs to be proper landscaping. Commissioner Otley Brown agreed with all of those comments that they must landscape all of the lot line and plant trees in the vacant area, put a fence up to prevent cars from going there. She saw the storage shed on site and also in the street, and wondered if that's related to something going on site. The signage also has to be coordinated with the drawings in reality because the drawings in reality don't match. And she had also been to the site. Commissioner Sheta, he says, and that was my reaction too, when you see drawings like this, you get upset. You see existing, when nothing is existing, you get upset. Architect signs and seals this. He visited the site. He said we should give a hard time about the lumen spread spill to the site to the north that may become residential because it's not a developed site. There are very large trailers parked on the site. It's as if it's a building. It's the equivalent as if it were tolerating larger floor area on site. With respect to the landscaping, the 1997 drawing says existing landscaping. The photos show nothing there. Commissioner Shibeta said He shares the same concerns with the problematic application with respect to landscaping. Because of the residential nature of this area, tall trees may be necessary because of lighting. With respect to the trailers, which is tantamount to an increase in floor area. And it doesn't seem like this applicant has taken proper discretion or direction. I'm not sure if that's a typo. And then, Commissioner Otley Brown says the best way to prevent an illegal use is to landscape it so you can't even walk on it, even with ground cover like spruce. The architect must inspect the site and make sure it represents the actual conditions and should state on the drawings that they were prepared based on inspection. So that's the reason that I didn't allow the adjournment, because the site is, half of the site is illegally operated and the site itself has all of these elements on it that are not permitted. So what are we gonna do?
Well, yeah, I apologize for this. The only thing I can tell the board is if you could give me some time to go back and try to address all these issues and some time to do it, and we'll come back to you with a plan. At this point, like I said, some of those issues are legacy issues. Some of those issues go back to the 1970s. And, a lot of them we were not aware of. So all I can request is give us some opportunity to go back and look at all these issues and try to resolve them, and we'll come back to you with a plan.
Okay, so I'm still confused. You had 6 months.
Yes.
What are you doing for the last 6 months?
Yes, we did have 6 months, but a lot of those issues I wasn't aware of. We were working through the landscaping issue. There were some things I'm not aware of. So I apologize if it's my mistake, but so
let me understand this. So you're not aware of them because your counsel didn't advise you of the issues, or the person who appeared, let me see who appeared at that last hearing. It was just Ms. Fola there, and that's it, right? Did you come with anyone else to that hearing? I didn't write their names down if you did.
I don't think so.
So is the issue that, are you the person who deals most directly with your counsel?
yeah, the problem is like Elise was saying before, there's a confusing chain of involvement in this, okay? Elise is not working directly for us, and that's the problem with this. So I will get that corrected. I can only tell you, if you could give me the opportunity to work through these issues, we'll work through the issues. So we want the site to be in compliance. We want to get it in coordination with your requests. So if I can just ask for some time to go back and review everything and try to get this in compliance, we will do our best on it.
Okay, where are you located?
Out of Chicago.
Okay, do you have anyone locally in the field who can act on your behalf?
Yeah, we have Highport Engineering.
Okay.
He's an engineering firm. He's not particularly working on this particular location, but they're our main point of contact in a lot of cases. We also have maintenance people that are in the field that work for BP. So we have a number of people that could access the site.
Okay, so with respect to accessing the site, the use of the rear of that site for parking behind the building is completely illegal.
Okay.
Site immediately, not giving you time, immediately has to be fenced off on all sides and parking prohibited immediately.
Understand.
Okay, and in terms of giving you time, I'm not going to give you a lot of time because we want to see that you're actually doing these things, right? Fencing,
Okay.
call somebody and they install fences, right? And
Sure.
and you close off the access to that parking area, which is through your main part of your lot, and then you can talk about what are the other things. In terms of the car wash, I'm not sure that we would allow it, but let's just start off with, I think it was the illegal parking, which was our main surprise, because our prior approval was very clear about that. So that needs to be step one. And so I would want to see you back pretty soon to show us that you've at least followed that, and then
Okay.
have more time to do drawings and lighting level readings and all of that sort of stuff, okay?
That's fair. Yep.
I'd like to ask the other commissioners if they have any other ideas for what to do immediately.
I think the roadmap that you have laid out, Madam Chair, seems reasonable.
Okay. Commissioner Otley Brown, did you have anything else in terms of the activities there? You're muted.
I agree that the roadmap is reasonable, but the bottom line is get moving.
Yeah.
Get moving, get started, and just march along and correct everything that we've identified, basically. As if your business depends on it.
I understand. Thank you. Yep.
Which, by the way, it actually does. And you should know that our commissioners do regular site visits. I'm going to ask them in a month to do drive-bys of this site to just check that we see what we're expecting to see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, and anything else, Commissioner Sheta or Shibata, you want to add anything?
No, I believe we spoke enough. Now it's time to listen to them, and hopefully they're gonna talk.
Okay. All right then. So I'd like to see if there are any members of the public who want to speak on this item. Go ahead, Tony.
This item is 52871BZ, 13340, 150th Street, Queens.
Okay, so I'm going to, depending on our schedule, have you back in, I would say 1 month is enough time to install fencing. I don't know, do you need a permit to install? You don't need a permit to install fencing on your own property, right? I don't think. Not sure about that.
And Madam Chair, can we make sure this fencing is going to be something that is going to be more appropriate for a residential community, not is.
Yes. So, right. Okay. So that's the other thing. So the fencing now what we're talking about is, so there's two parts to this. I want the fencing up now to stop the illegal use. And then the decorative fencing that's appropriate because it's going to be adjacent to a residence would come later. Yes, it's a more expensive solution, but we've been waiting for 6 months with no response. So I would say throw up fencing now, but understand that that's only the temporary solution. Ultimately, it will have to be fencing that's appropriate to the community. Okay?
Okay. All right.
Understood? Okay.
Yep.
So he should also listen to the review session and the public hearing from June 5th.
Yes. Right. So both the review and the review session and the
June
public.
15th, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's June 14th and 15th? No, June.
No, it's 15th.
15th. Okay. So on June 15th, we had both a review session like we had today, this morning, and then it switches to hearing, right? So listen to that because there'll be more color on what my notes said. Obviously, there was more discussion that I couldn't take notes on. Okay. So
Okay.
1 month to install fast fencing and to close off the parking there. And then understand that we're going to have you replace that fencing later with decorative fencing. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, Elise?
Mhm.
Okay. And then we'll talk about the time to prepare the other materials. How much time do you need for the other materials? We'll set up both.
Okay. If you possibly give us 90 days on that?
Okay.
Is that a possibility?
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to have you come back with having submitted photos of the fencing installed.
Okay.
Actually, maybe another way to do it is in 30 days, you need to submit to us photos
Okay.
of fencing installed. And then you come back for the continued hearing in 90 days. Does that sound right?
That sounds fair. Yes.
Okay, so when I say 90 days to submit or 90 days to come back? To submit? Okay. So 90 days for the other materials to submit. So a hearing accordingly. and 1 month to submit photos of the fence installed. And if we don't receive those photos in a month, we're going to call you back faster. We're just going to throw you on the calendar and hear it. Okay.
In 90
Okay.
days, is it a proposal of the landscaping or landscape?
It's a proposal.
Okay, I'm just clear.
You know, it's true that timing wise, we're kind of missing out on ideal planting season, but the site is so problematic, I think we're going to have to just move according to however things work. Okay. All right then. So that's what we'll do. Okay.
Fair enough. Got it. Okay.
Very much for calling in, and please attend all of our hearings on this application.
Absolutely. I'll be on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Elise. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. It's 12:05, so back at 12:15. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, if commissioners could come back, please. We're missing Commissioner Shanda, Vice Chair Shanda. There we go. Okay. All right.
Okay, so we're back on the record, and the next item is item number 15, 38985 BZ 2090 Bronxdale Avenue. The Bronx?
Hi, Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik, PC.
Okay. Okay, Tony, you're not coming with anyone else, right?
No.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your response to, in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to all board member questions?
I do. First, I want to say we're working with Mr. Gorman's office, who prepared the plan drawings. Page 004 shows the concrete block trash enclosure with solid metal gate. There were multiple submissions because there was a typo, and that was just the second submission was correct because you mentioned multiple submissions.
Oh, okay.
But page 004, and on the cover letter, it's change 5.
Okay, so wait a minute. What was the date of that submission?
The 23rd.
Okay, so submission on 12/23 is the correct set of plans?
Yeah,
Is that
right? Yeah, and it should you should have a cover letter on the bubbled set. I don't know if you can pull that up in front of you, but change 5 shows the updated trash enclosure.
Okay. Okay. So you can see, in terms of our conversation at the prior application where we're talking about these enclosures,
Mm-hmm.
The move is towards more permanent, better quality enclosures, because we see these little fences really just don't work. So this is great. So I want to actually thank your client for being so willing to make these changes and to use that steel door. Okay, so.
And then on A005 is a planting pit detail. I'm not
so
sure.
That planting pit, see that's where for some reason there's confusion about the difference between a tree pit and a planting bed.
Okay, understood.
So a tree pit, as I said, is you're out in an open field and you want to plant a tree. You dig a hole according to the instructions that are on that tree pit detail, and you drop the tree inside and you hold it up with stakes. These are beds that are being prepared in an urban situation where you're right up against asphalt or concrete, and you need to create curbing and you need to dig to a certain level, and often they're lined. They're not just soil, because it's not really soil down there, right? So there's actually a way of making one of these planting beds to encourage the proper drainage and everything. And when it's an architect or an engineer with experience doing these, the detail is just a standard detail. but I can't seem to get the standard detail out of so many of our applicants.
Well,
And
I think our office has given you the standard detail in the past, so we can provide that to the architect.
Okay, please do that and share what you find with us, and maybe we'll just put that on an admin notice. This is what a standard detail looks like.
Okay. And then I would just ask if that's the only
Yes.
open, could we close this on condition we'll submit
Yes.
that detail?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think those were the only notes. So let's go. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, so I'd like to see if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak.
This is item number 15, 38985 BZ 2090 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay, so then let's give it a minute. So how much time to just make that little change?
As little probably time. I'm not, the architect isn't here, but I imagine as little time as we can get.
Okay, well, okay. So I'll just say 2 weeks, and hopefully we can fit you in to a soon schedule, okay?
Thank you.
So it's really just the planting bed detail. Okay. Okay, so then I would like to, nobody's called in. I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter. Vice Chair Chanda.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta.
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
so the submission is only plantings bed detail, and that's all you need.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next item is item number 16, 82586 BZ 1703 Bronxdale Avenue, Borough of the Bronx.
Okay, Ms. Barantia is in. Is there anyone else with, oh, and Mr. Corey, is he going to testify?
No, it's just myself today.
Okay.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes.
Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Lisa Orantia, Ackerman LLP, on behalf of the applicant. Good afternoon. So I want to address the comments that were made this morning. Number one, regarding the maximum occupancy. This was addressed in the December 22 submission as a footnote, and I don't intend to minimize the issue of maximum occupancy. I had understood that since we had gone over it in detail in the November 9th hearing, there was agreement on this. The November 9th hearing, we had a detailed discussion of what the maximum occupancy of 850 related to. And in the 1987 BSA approved drawings, you can see the 850 occupancy is shown as being the number of people in the place of assembly rooms. There's 150 in the basement, and then there's 700 shown on the first floor. There's no occupancy count provided for the non-assembly rooms. Then in 1997, the grant approved an additional enlargement, which did not propose an increase in occupancy. So it was understood that maintaining the 850 maximum occupancy related once again to, as shown in the approved 1986 drawings, 800 in the assembly rooms. There is no intention to increase occupancy in the assembly rooms. The kitchen storage space is going to be for staff. The applicant understands that the occupancies in the mezzanine bridal room is, the same people who are going to be attending the functions. So what we're seeking is to preserve the maximum occupancy that has existed since 1983, which is 850 people in the assembly rooms.
So I'm very confused because for one, I don't find the drawing that you're referring to. I'm looking at a 1987 BSA resolution that says there will be no increase in the permitted occupancy of the building, flat like that. The 1998 CO says basement, 150 persons permitted, maximum. First, 700 persons permitted. That's the C of O. That's not specific as to space. It's to do with the first floor and the basement. And the second floor is an apartment, so there isn't an occupancy count for that.
Yeah.
So I don't understand where you're getting this from, and I'm very concerned that what's going on now is we didn't accept an increase in occupancy, but those additional rooms are being converted to bridal suites, where I always look at those as changing rooms. That's where the bride and family and so on wait until presented, as opposed to a place where you might simultaneously have a bridal shower for somebody unrelated to what's going on downstairs. So I don't actually understand this creeping of the occupancy count, because
okay, there's no intent to increase the occupancy. I agree with you that there is this ambiguity, because in the C of O, it does seem to show that 850 is the maximum in the building. My concern is that when you go back and you try and understand what does this 850 relate to, and you go to the BSA approved drawings from 1986, and those clearly show 150 people in the basement party room and 700 people on the first floor in the 3 party rooms. And so you come to understand that the ambiguity is resolved in finding that the 850 applies to the assembly spaces. There's no accounting for restaurant or banquet hall staff in the building. And I'm sorry, there's no dispute that that these party rooms, they're not to be used independently. So they're for guests who are preparing for events. They go to the party room, like you said, they do their hair and their makeup, and then they wait until the event starts and they come down and they join the party. So there's no intent on using those party rooms independently, and there's no objection to having that stated as a condition in the resolution or on the C of O, and shown on BSA plans and DOB plans.
I'm looking at the drawings that you provided, which are from 1997. There is no indication on those plans at all of occupancy. It just names, right? So I'm not seeing that anywhere.
I agree. It's not on the 97 plans. It's on the 86 plans. And then when the BSA in 97 says,
I don't have the 86 plans. When were they submitted?
They were submitted.
They're in the package dated 8/4/2020. The 8/4/2020 package includes the 1986 approved plan and 1997 and the COs. So I think if I understand Ms. Arantia is that, and I do And I cannot locate the documents, but I do seem to remember that was the understanding that each one of these occupants, each one of these banquet rooms will have a capacity limit.
Correct.
And so it was limited to the occupancy of each one of these banquet rooms. And so the maximum 850 was derived from the occupancy of these banquet rooms. And what you're proposing, if I understand, is that occupancy will remain 850 because these additional spaces that you're legalizing are not separate independent party rooms. These are support accessory kind of rooms to these banquet halls. So any increase in staff is not included in this 850. The staff is separate. And that was there in one of the reports, and I cannot remember where I saw it, but I do remember seeing some clear distinction. That's 850 is the guests or people arriving to the banquet, not in something to that effect, and I cannot find it.
So wait a second. So I'm really confused. When you get a public assembly permit, and Chief Daly can weigh in on this. When you get a public assembly permit, we've had this discussion before on other sites. It includes everyone. It's about the people who occupy the building. And when the CFO says 850 people in the building, it's 850 people, whether they're staff or they're guests. That's how the fire department and the buildings department determines that you have adequate egress, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually don't understand this. And I'm looking.
The assembly rooms are going to be limited consistent with the 150 count in the basement party room. That's going to have its own place of assembly permit. And then the 3 rooms on the first floor will also have place of assembly permits. They will only allow 700 people in those rooms. I mean, whether they're guests or staff, that's the maximum occupancy in those rooms. And that's all going to be consistent.
No, but so I'm really confused now because you're relying on these drawings from 1987 that don't even have the right occupancy count. So it shows an existing banquet hall, 200 persons, another banquet hall, 250 persons, which probably should have been 150, and another one, 500. So that's more than, isn't that giving us 950? That's giving us 950 on the first floor. And we didn't even get to the cellar. So if you're relying on that, the drawings are wrong.
No, that drawing that you're looking at shows that 250 people is the rated capacity of that room. That was the space, it's the former courtyard space. So that space in the middle of the building between the existing banquet hall in the back, 200 people, existing banquet hall, 500 people. That's your 700 people. In 1986, the applicant came in and said, I want to fill in this former courtyard space. What would be a rated capacity is 250 people there. However, the applicant agreed not to increase occupancy. The applicant agreed to limit the banquet halls to 700, the first floor banquet halls to 700 people. So that's what BSA has consistently approved, 700 people on the first floor, even though the code would have allowed an additional 250 people in that additional banquet hall. The applicant agreed to restrict and comply with BSA's requirement, no more than 700 people in those banquet halls on the first floor. And you'll see that the parking calculation was also, it showed what would be required if you added 250 people in that middle space. However, there was no increase in occupancy. So it's just reflecting that this is a space that would allow for additional 250 people. However, they are not going to add them. The total number of people is going to stay at 850. So 700 on the first floor, 150 on the base in the basement.
Oh, I'm super. I'd like to ask Chief Daly to weigh in on this because if there's a public assembly permit which I believe it is for this, doesn't it include everyone?
No, Madam Chair, no, the building department, you have a PA permit for each space over 75 persons,
Right.
right? And then, of course, your certificate of occupancy would list each PA space, and then the spaces that have less than 75 person, they'll say, okay, banquet hall, 70 persons. Then you
Right.
add all that up.
Right, but so when the CO says occupancy of 800 persons, for example,
Right.
isn't that the occupancy of the entire building? Because the C of O is by floor.
Well, no, the C of O should include the total count of the PA spaces and the non-PA spaces.
But in this case, the CO only says basement, 150 maximum persons permitted, including the loading and unloading area. This is the part that I'm very confused.
Yeah, this is why it's very confusing, and we were hoping to get clarification through this application, is that code would allow many more people than what the BSA is limiting this applicant to. So the C of O is trying to show compliance with the resolution, which limits 850 in the assembly rooms, but it's not giving us an accurate count of the occupants in the building. And I think if the C of O were to be issued correctly, it would reflect the maximum number of people allowed by code, but then it would include the board's condition that maximum occupancy in place of assembly spaces is limited to 850.
No, because because those little bridal suites are not able to handle more than 75 people, so they're not public assembly.
That's
So
right.
then you could increase the occupancy, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid, right?
No, but we would seek to have a condition stated in the resolution that, and reflected on DOB plans, that occupancy in those rooms, the bridal suite, is not an increase in occupancy. It's simultaneous with the events in the other rooms, so that you are still limited to 850 people in those party rooms, and those the prep areas are not for independent parties. There's no dispute about that.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
shouldn't we be looking at the Schedule A that was filed instead of the certificate of occupancy?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
This may be so old that we don't have an easy access to a Schedule A is the problem.
I am looking at it right now. It was Schedule A that was filed under job number 220-522-726. For the basement, the existing number of persons was 170. The proposed for the basement, 171. The existing for the first floor is 700. The proposed is 827 people. Then for the second floor, existing was apartment. Now that's being converted to an office for 10 persons.
Yeah, but so that was the proposal before, when they were proposing to increase the occupancy to 1,000 in the building.
Right.
And we said, well, it's parking, and they said, we can't give you parking. So then they backed off and they said that they're not going to request an increase in occupancy, right? So this is where it's coming up. It'd be one thing if we were like, okay, 1,000 people, broken down the way you said. But then we would say 1,000 people, you need to give us however many more parking spaces. They're asking for a reduction in parking over what was required in the prior approvals.
Right.
So that's part of why this is coming up for me now. Okay, you're not asking for that increase, but then this language of, yeah, but maybe we will. That's the part I'm having trouble with. Like, how many staff are we talking about? are there 150 staff? Is that ending up being a 1,000-person occupancy?
Oh, I agree. Oh, they should amend their Schedule A with the Department of Buildings and then submit that to the BSA to show the breakdown.
Well, we're going to submit to DOB whatever is consistent with what the BSA resolves in this application. We fully intend on amending the Alt 1 application with DOB so that we comply with BSA's resolution.
Oh, you could submit it now. Everyone can review it, and if we're all in agreement with
Well,
the number.
we don't know what your conditions are going to be in this grant, so we'd like to get the resolution, conform the DOB plans to the resolution, and apply for the permits. This is kind of the reverse, that we should submit the DOB application to BSA and get approval. I don't understand how that would work.
I think what Chief Daly is saying is that when you submitted your Schedule A, you broke everything down very clearly, because that's what the Schedule A requires you to do. What's the actual occupancy per room? We don't have any drawings that show occupancy per room, either rated occupancy or limited occupancy. Maybe that's part of the problem. When I look at the drawing, all I see is the word 850, and I don't, or whatever. I don't see how many people in the kitchen, how many people in the whatever the other rooms are, right? And so that's why when I read that footnote, I'm like, wait a minute.
Okay. So there in the prior submitted BSA drawings, existing proposed, there's an occupancy load table, and it does include the counts of the non-assembly rooms. However, after the November 9th hearing, I thought we had agreement that the 850 applies to the assembly rooms only, and that's why the occupancy counts in the non-assembly rooms was eliminated from the table. I understood that that was going to be strictly a DOB compliance issue and not BSA. I want to provide you with the information that you're asking for. I thought we were going in a different direction after the November 9th hearing.
So okay. The reason that it's so confusing is because of charts like that only show occupancy of those rooms and show as if there's no occupancy in any other room. You have to, we ask this on all of our applications, that are occupied, show us the occupancy of every room, rated occupancy.
Okay, yeah, and we can go back and show you that, what we had initially showed you until this last submission. Our prior submission contained all the occupancies. It was just a failed attempt to clarify what I thought to provide the board with what I thought you were asking for. But I'm happy to have it restored.
Okay,
I just believed, and I think it's rational to base the board's prior limit on 850 to the assembly rooms, as that was what was shown in the approved drawings from 86.
It's weird because the 96 didn't agree with that.
It doesn't reflect it. It's simply silent on it. And then after that, you see these references to 850 as if it applies to the whole building.
Right. So it doesn't sound like it's doing what you're saying in the 90s.
Right. What I understand from that is that there's an ambiguity. You go back and you do the research and you see that the 850 applies to the assembly rooms.
I don't know. I'm trying to find the old drawings that showed the breakdown, because previously we were looking at the breakdown as including everybody, the 1,000 people in the building. So that's why there wasn't a discussion about it, because I assumed when you're talking about 1,000 people, you're talking about everybody, because we added those little rooms. and the little rooms are not assembly spaces. Because based on what were you increasing the occupancy of the building? Based on just squishing more people into the existing banquet rooms?
Well, no, yeah, we were going to increase occupancy in 2 of the banquet rooms, and then we were accounting for occupancy in the non-assembly rooms. And that's where we got to total building occupancy of 1,008.
I rest my case, Counselor. I'm looking at your chart number now. Number of proposed occupants. First floor, ballroom, it goes from 350 to 460. Pavilion,
Right.
200
Yeah.
down to 175. Crystal
Right.
goes from 150 up to 175.
Yeah,
22. Storage dishwasher, 5. Office coat room, 4.
right. I'm looking at the same chart.
Total is 1,008.
Yes, that was the initial request. And then we modified the request to say, we no longer seek to increase occupancy in the assembly rooms.
No.
I don't think this is a contradiction. This is trying to explain that the original limit was 850 on the assembly rooms. Initially, we sought to increase occupancy in the assembly rooms. We later revised it in our discussions about the parking. And now we're saying we're going to keep the occupancy that has existed since 1983. 850.
But it isn't 850 because you never counted the kitchen 22, the storage.
The BSA never counted it. In 1986, the BSA did not consider the occupancy of the non-assembly rooms.
All right, so this is the part that doesn't make any sense. Weren't you asking for an amendment to allow 1,008 occupancy?
Yes, initially.
Okay, so you were asking for an amendment to allow 1,008 that included kitchen, storage, office, laundry room, right? So, and now you're saying the 850 that didn't include kitchen, storage, all that stuff. It's not consistent. You're arguing 2 sides of the same story.
No, it is consistent. We're not increasing.
Wait. The actual request then is 850 plus 22 plus 5 plus 4 plus 7. I don't know about 7. Yeah. That's what you're actually asking for. And that's what you should be saying.
We were asking to clarify and that there's no change, that in 86, there were 22 people in the kitchen. It's just that it wasn't expressly stated.
All right. But now it's expressly stated based on that chart, because on this chart that says 1,008 was my original request, it included the, whatever the number is, 22, 5, 4, and maybe 7, and 7, yes. So those numbers, wait, I want to be clear because I don't want this confusion going on in the future. You need to add those numbers to your chart, and that's what you're asking for. You're asking for an occupancy not of 850, you're asking for a building occupancy of 850 plus those other spaces, consistent with what your chart showed in the submission in on 8/19/2020. Otherwise, you're talking from 2 sides of your hat inconsistently. All right? Otherwise,
I understand what you're asking for, but I disagree that it was something inconsistent. You can see on that chart that there's a blank space on kitchen and storage and office coat room. Those spaces were obviously occupied. It wasn't that there were 0 people in those rooms.
I understand. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Would it be helpful if the future submission says, I'm seeking the 1,005 in the building, of which there will be a maximum of 850 in the various banquet rooms?
It doesn't equal 1,008. It equals 850 plus whatever that is.
Right. But within that sentence saying that a maximum of 850 would be in the banquet rooms.
Yes.
I
agree with you. Could even include the 2 dressing rooms.
Yes,
I will, Madam Chair, I will agree with Commissioner Otley Brown. The reason we also want to make it clear that the guests, patrons coming to this facility is 850 because that affects the parking need. So we need to distinguish between the total occupants of the building versus patrons coming to this facility because that accounts for the parking. So having two charts which says PA permit for these spaces, which totals 850, and the total occupancy load of each one of those spaces comes to whatever 1,000 number, I'm okay with that. But
So I just want to say, if you just go to the drawing of August 19th, 2020, it was submitted August 19th, 2020.
Yes, I had raised that question. I was the one who had raised the question about the discrepancy in the numbers and that we are actually only going to allow 850. And it was at that time, I clearly remember being clarified by Ms. Arantia that they are going to limit it to 850 and not seek any more increase in any one of those ballrooms or any one of those banquet hall spaces. They would revert back to the original occupancy cap that was placed that added to 850, but the total number of people, and the reason some of this increase was also accounting for people coming, helping, and all of that, and that was coming to 1,008. That I clearly remember being what was explained at that time.
So no. So the one that let's just go back for a second. If we look at the chart, I'm just looking at the chart.
Yeah.
This is by the applicant, right? That 1,008 includes an increase from 350 to 460 people in one of the ballrooms, and a decrease in another ballroom and an increase in another ballroom, which is a wash, right? So basically, we're just talking about an increase of 110 people in the larger ballroom. That's what it included. That increase of 110 is no longer being asked for because of the parking problem. However, that chart accurately, give or take, represents the other spaces in the building for which occupancy loads must always be provided. So let's clear this up now. Let's get drawings submitted that show occupancy of each room based either on rated or on whatever the normal criteria is, because a kitchen has all this equipment and so has a different kind of rating. Let's get every one of the spaces with the projected occupancy that shows that there will be no simultaneous occupancy of the, when we say simultaneous, in other words, you can't rent out those bridal suites for other purposes. So it's occupancy accessory to, and however that's described, with the ballrooms for those bridal suites. And let's find out how many actual people are in this building so that we don't have to have this discussion ever again. And we don't have to talk about how the 1986 drawing said one thing and the 96 drawing said another and the C of O says another, and we have no idea what to do, okay?
Right, no, I agree. It should be very easy to follow, and we'll amend the plans to show what you've asked for. And it's stated in our submission, since we're no longer asking for the increase in occupancy of the 110 guests in the first floor ballroom, and since we're considering the 10 guests in the second floor bridal suite room to be simultaneous, that only leaves 38 other people in the building. So we'll show that it's the 850 plus the 38 people in the building. So yeah, we will go ahead and do that. There was some other requests for clarification on the plans. The board asked for the means of egress from the basement and from the small hall on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
The hall on the first floor, is that, which hall? Can I get clarification on that? Because you enter through the lobby doors on Bronxdale.
Okay, let me see if I can. So it was that not the entrance, it's the egress that I was not finding. So in the hall, the crystal room, and by the way, when you talk about the rooms, the crystal, I think the later set of plans doesn't label the drawings, crystal room and pavilion and so on. And then the chart refers to those rooms. So you don't actually know which is which. So please make sure that the chart and the drawings say the names of the rooms. The names got dropped off in a later submission, and I happen to be looking at the August submission that has the name. So,
Okay.
so the crystal room, you show egress. So that's at the first floor. So I only see egress through a staircase, but then at the back, the second means at the back, but then I don't see where it goes to at the cellar level. So the basement floor, yeah, it's, in other words, just show the route of egress from the crystal room. So there'll be kind of dash lines and arrows that takes you outside to the street. And part of the thing that makes it confusing is, which is on so many architects' drawings, the plans float in the middle of nowhere, even though they're sitting on the ground and there's a street right outside. So at the basement, it's a very steep slope. So the basement really is a basement. It's basically a first floor by the time it makes it to the back there. So those doors are not opening into an alleyway. They're opening direct to the street, but there's no street shown on the drawing. So make it clear that those basement doors are opening directly to the street and name the street, right? And then, I don't know what this one is. What's the difference? Oh, this is the change, right? So you're actually, even if I've got this correct, creating a fire corridor. Or did create a fire corridor for that crystal room at the basement level. And that, by the way, is, there's a room called room 22, which is described as a electric closet, but it's an awfully big electric closet. And it looks like it used to be, or is still, a truck dock. So that's a question. The C of O refers to a truck dock. So obviously take it off.
Yeah, there is no, it says loading berth, 429 square feet.
Yeah.
But there is no, I think that was a mischaracterization because on the 1986, I think it's 1986 BSA approved drawings, it shows that area as being loading and unloading, but it's not a loading berth. I think it was just for receipt of a service entrance. So.
Okay, so, because there's this rectangle that kind of looks like where you pull the truck into on that room number 22, labeled as in the basement, labeled as an electric room. So anyway, it's maybe it's supposed to be conveying rolling gates or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there is a roll down gate. If you go to the Google Street Maps, you can see on Van Nest Avenue, the roll down gate there.
All right, just to clarify and make sure your C of O doesn't still indicate it's a loading berth unless it is.
Yeah, no, it should not refer to a loading berth. Another change that was requested was that the section should show the basement, so we can go ahead and add that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the refrigerated trash enclosure. I wasn't able to get a hold of the applicant, so I'm not sure if there already is one there or not, but I don't think that there's a problem with providing one. And we can, yeah, we can show that on the drawings as well. A restrictive deck to tie the parking lot and the banquet hall together. That we can provide to the board, or we can also have it submitted to DOB as a condition of the grant. It would be an off-site restrictive parking declaration that the DOB is used to reviewing and accepting.
Oh, you mean there's a standard form?
Yeah, for when zoning requires off-site when zoning allows for off-site parking, it requires that there be a restrictive deck. So it's one of the standard forms in their easements and decks.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do, thank you, I forgot about that one. So what you could do is use that form and add to it that it's not just in favor of DOB, but in favor of the BSA, because it's a condition of our grant, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And submit a copy of it, a draft of it to our council.
Okay.
So we would want that recorded prior to the release of the resolution.
Okay.
Okay.
And then conditions stated on the C of O, BSA calendar number for both the parking lot and the banquet hall site. There was a discussion about the noise attenuation that referenced on the C of O that says, and it's in the resolution as well, reference to N2, ambient noise quality. That, and I didn't have a lot of time to research that. That looks like a N2 is the applicable standard for the R5 zoning district. And in the noise code.
Oh, in the noise code.
And I don't know if it's currently reading that way. I couldn't find a reference to N2 in the current noise code. However, because this N2 is a reference to R5 district, which is where this building is, and there would necessarily have been compliance when the C of O was issued, it seems to be just reiterating the applicable noise code standard for the building in R5.
Okay.
But if BSA is requesting a certain and the N2 relates back to a certain DBA, so it's a times of day. There's a 65 DBA and other times it's 55 DBA. But it's not clear to me, and if the board wants to be more specific about that, what that standard is, I think it would be helpful.
Tracy has her hand up. Maybe she can.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting for Ms. Arante to.
Sorry.
Yeah, so let's hear from Tracy Banke, who may be able to shed light on this. Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I did the same research and came up with the same conclusion that it seems to be that these ambient noise quality zones were in the 1998 noise code, but I don't know if they're currently, they might have been repealed in 2005. I can't confirm that because I didn't have enough time to check. So in 1998, it was based on the land use zone and the certain DBA that was required. But now it might be more, the new code seems more site specific. Like the language from me looking at it seems more like if this is happening on a site within 10 dBA of what's existing, as opposed to a blank number. So I don't know which we prefer.
So we want to use temporary codes. So I think that what we could do is, I was hoping to be able to close this. I'm not sure if we'll be able to, but because of this little bit of back and forth on the noise. But the idea would be to refer in our conditions to contemporary noise code. And because all we're trying to do is say, obviously it's a banquet hall, has loud parties. Make sure your loud parties don't exceed whatever is reasonable at the adjacent residential properties, and however that's done, right?
Right. But this, this request, this current application doesn't change the envelope of the building. And again, we're not increasing occupancy. It should be the same conditions that had previously existed. I mean, we have no problem saying we continue to comply with this noise quality standard that has always been in effect.
So, one of the reasons that we put those things in is so that if there are complaints, there's a place to go, right? And also for the future boards to say, look, the board imposed this, for instance, this N2 standard, and today it's imposing the contemporary equivalent of the N2 standard. And then that's that, right? And that way, if it becomes in the future a problem because management changed its operations or something, then you can always say, here's the standard. You need to meet the standard. That's the only reason that we put it in. So we'll have a phrase about whatever the current noise code is that's the equivalent of this N2. And we'll just insert that as one of the conditions, right?
Okay.
So it's only conditions that are not relevant or this this issue of the residential use that's in the same building, right?
Right.
Damping be provided to insulate abutting residential uses. Well, maybe there are, I don't know. So if there are houses that are abutting, it would be relevant. So, okay. Anything else on those conditions?
No, I think that's it. Is there a way that we could close today and submit?
Yeah, so I think that given that we know what already know, because we can look it up online, what a standard parking restriction declaration looks like, you're just going to fill it in and add us as the designees or the beneficiaries.
Okay.
And we already know what the occupancy counts are. We just need you to go through each room and put the occupancy in and start. And then I think we have Tracy will take a look at what the appropriate noise code is for today. So we can make sure that the notes on the CFO are contemporary notes. And then you're just going to clarify with arrows the means of egress from the cellar banquet hall and from the small hall on the first floor. That's the crystal room. Okay.
Okay.
So then let's go. Did we already go to the public? Let's go to the public.
This application is 825 86 BZ, 1703 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay, so how much time do you need to do that?
We could probably do it in as quickly as 2 weeks, but
well, it's sort of a lot for us to review. So I don't know that I can get you right on the next hearing. So I can write 2 weeks and you can work towards that. But I'm not sure we're going to be able to put you on a schedule for 2 weeks submission date.
Okay.
We'll try. Okay.
Okay.
So are you closing?
Yeah. So, but the other thing is so you're going to submit in 2 weeks, but our council has to review the restrictive deck and sign off on it. So there may be a tiny bit of back and forth. So submit as soon as you've done the restrictive deck. If you've done it, do it tomorrow, submit it immediately to council as opposed to waiting until you're done with the other stuff. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You have a chance to review.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So let's see. All right, so for anything else, did I leave anything else out? Anybody? Okay, so then I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, next item is 2191 BZ, 2407, 2417 Linden Boulevard, Brooklyn.
Yeah, the owner's here. Do I just swear in?
Yes.
Where's the owner?
He's here.
They're present. Hardath.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see his name. Okay, raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond to city board member questions?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, Fan Baton from Sheldon Loeb LPC for the applicant. We attended the review session. I know that there are not many comments, that there had been previously a few adjournments on the case. We were able to get in touch with the owner, and the owner is now represented by counsel, by our office, and he understands the severity of the current situation and intends to move forward with the application, and will make the appropriate changes necessary. So he joins us today as well.
Okay, thank you. I just a little confusing. Who did you represent before?
It was an intermediary. It was technically our client, even though we were authorized by the owner to file. But there were one or two intermediaries that we spoke to, but that has since been cleared up, and we were able to get in touch with the owner specifically, and now formally represents him.
Okay, so do we have an owner's authorization form?
We did. In the
Yeah, they submitted it.
Now, recently.
We had it previously, but our client was an intermediary, a separate spokesperson for the owner. But that has been cleared up.
Sorry, the word client. The person who hires you and pays your bills is the client.
I understand. So that was a different person.
It was a different. So the fee owner needs to have given us an authorization, owner's authorization. If this other person who paid your bills was not the fee owner, and this person is now the fee owner, which is the case. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce. Lachminarayan is the fee owner, then that we need an owner's authorization from him.
We'll confirm that it's on file. We have a retainer agreement now with the owner. That was the issue before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you briefed the owner on what the issues are on the site?
Yes, we have an understanding that what was previously approached by the board and what is proposed as part of the application, very clear about the operations in the site, what is allowed and what's not. It's just we only spoke to the owner recently, so there's still some back end information that we have to provide and get in touch with the architect and such. But we intend to work with the applicant, and the applicant could also speak, the owner could also speak regarding that.
Okay, so one of the things that I just want to point out is that we've had 2 hearings on this. The first one was more than a year ago, like a year and a month. So with that, I say happy anniversary, except it's not happy because we can't have been in hearings for a year and a month on this case. So that was on December 17th, 2019. And then we had a subsequent hearing and 3 adjournments in between on May 18th, 2020. And that the owner should be listening to the hearing and review session. So you should forward those video clips so that they can understand what it is, what's going on, what it is we're asking for. And that the fact is that ownership's failure to be responsive to our directions, and they're not suggestions, they're directions, can result in the loss of the right to use this site for commercial purposes, which is located in the residence district, okay? So a long time ago, there was a variance granted on this site, and we do not need to continue the variance if we find that the operations have become a nuisance to the neighborhood. So we can, and we have done on other cases, deny the right to continue a use that's a nuisance, a commercial use in a residence district that's a nuisance. Okay, so that's a pretty costly decision. And so you must tread with understanding that we can and will and have done this for, on other sites. So I don't know if we need to go over that the site is in extremely bad condition and is not in compliance with the terms of the prior grants, and that it needs to be brought into compliance before we can have any discussion. This is an extension of term. And let's see if there is, and an amendment to legalize the building for used car sales. Is that still the case?
Would be for used car sales.
Okay, so before we can entertain any amendment to legalize anything, the site has to be brought into compliance with the terms of the grant. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
The one thing that we asked, it was about the squatter. The squatter on the site. So they were going to give us some documentation that that guy was that ceased. I don't know if they have that. And you wanted the architect in the last hearing, on the May hearing, you wanted the architect to appear at the hearing also. But then the thing about the squatter, the illegal occupancy, was that done? I don't remember seeing anything that came to approve that they were out of the space or.
I would ask the owner
Correct.
if he could provide some information. I know that there were conversations, so I don't know if he has the ability to unmute himself.
Yeah, please unmute yourself, Mr. Lakshminarayan. Champa, help me with that. Unmute.
Sorry, Hardat Lakshmi Narayan.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Can you let the board know about the illegal occupant? I think it was Brooklyn Speedway.
The Brooklyn Speedway has moved on their own.
Sorry, say it again louder.
They leave the site.
They have left or will leave?
Yes.
They have left the site.
Yeah.
So who's managing the site now?
I am managing it, Mike.
But who's what kind of activities are at the site?
Used car sales.
Okay.
And we can provide more information about the current user and proposed user for the site.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read my notes and other. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, since you're reading the notes, I think the issue, one of my comments will come up, so that's fine. I'll wait for that.
Yeah, so I just want, because we have the owner present on this call, who, by the way, needs to be present at every single hearing going forward. That's just going to be standard, okay? So my notes are, one of it was looking at the use group, that we had said that it could be more, that maybe the use group that's being requested is not the use group that this is, that it could be a use group 9, because there's no, as far as we know, no car service on the site, no repair service on the site. And so that was something that was supposed to be looked at to reduce the kind of scope of the ask. We needed landscape buffering on the rear lot line. We needed to clarify whether there is a related operation adjoining this. I believe that might have been addressed, that it's not allowed to be an operation adjoining this, but we also need landscaping details and a lumen diagram to make sure that the lighting levels do not flow into there's an adjacent residential property. We did see that the adjacent site is owned by the same property owner. So adjoining lots are not allowed to be used for used car sales, because they don't have, is my understanding, they do not have a variance, and they're located in a residential zoning district. So those concerns need to be addressed. And then those were notes from the first hearing in December of 2019. And then in May of 2020, so all those many months later, we note that a lumen spread diagram was provided, and it shows spread that exceeds 0 past the residential property line where there are windows. We ask that they be field measurements as opposed to modeling. There's a 25-foot high light pole that's close to the residential property, which undoubtedly casts light on the residential property. So that light has to either be lowered or shielded or both in order to eliminate the light spread. And the lighting should be done, the light analysis should be done with field measurements that follow our administrative notice. We need more information on the landscape buffering zone. What is the condition of the planting beds? In other words, photographs of them. Satellite imagery shows that there's vegetation there, but the photos that are taken by our compliance officer show that the area is dug up. So actually, I'd appreciate commissioners and our compliance officer, Ted Ricketts, if they would go out and inspect the site again on one of their other site inspections and take photos. But we also need photos from the applicant to show the conditions. So our inspections are not in replacement of photographs provided by the applicant. They're just another way for us to, our own inspections are a way for us to verify the photos and to get an actual feel for the site in reality. The photos, though, show a very messy site with paneling laid up against the chain link fence. There should be opaquing strips installed 100% in that fence to conceal the interior of the lot from view on that side. Don't understand what that paneling is for in any event. There are also tires stored on the exterior that cannot be there. And I'm not sure if those may have been related to the illegal use. So maybe they're gone, but we don't know. They must be removed. The photos also show collapsed and decaying chain link fencing, trash, and oil tanks, all of which have to be removed and replaced. The fencing has to be removed and replaced, and trash, of course, and oil tanks have to be removed. Compliance shows photos tell a completely different story about the site, hence the reason for site visits, than the photos that were provided by the applicant that date to 2018, when the site appeared vacant but in reasonably good shape. So a lot of bad stuff has happened at the site as a result of the illegal use. And so what is the condition today once that tenant or non-tenant has been moved out? Okay, so now we don't have to talk about the illegal user anymore. Apparently there was a tenant that was performing illegal repairs, so not sure what that is. So those were my notes. So I'm gonna go around and see if the other commissioners had other comments that I didn't pick up. So Vice Chair Shanda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my comments were, a lot of it was around the use group. The applicant was requesting a use group 16E, and we felt that may not be appropriate given that it's in a residential district with very active residential uses around, and the purpose for which the 16E was being requested can be achieved under use group 7D. And I think that's why we had asked the architect to be there to provide an explanation as to why 16E was being asked for and not 7D. 7D would have also allowed the auto service establishment to also include auto glass mirror shop, seat covers, EV charging station, and tire sales. Why and use group 6? I think that's because the applicant was proposing use group 16E, office for used car sales. And when we noticed that the office area is really tiny, it was not the driving factor, no pun intended. So it was primarily a space to store most of these items to be sold. So that's why we were questioning the need to up it to 16 when the current, or based on the past approval, it was 7D.
Okay, good. Anything else with that?
Yeah, and I think I had also asked the question, maybe alternative could be 9A. So that's about it. And all your other comments, I agree.
Okay, thank Commissioner Otley Brown. I see Tony's hand up, but we'll come back, okay?
Did we cover the proof of continuous legal use?
That's
Okay.
my question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Why don't you articulate that for the owner's benefit?
So they need to provide proof of the legal use of this property being continued since the expiration of the prior grant. So it can't use any reference to that illegal squatting use that was on the site.
Okay. And when was the expiration, do you know, of the grant?
Hold on, let me check my notes.
I think it was 2015, wasn't it?
My computer just jumped. I hate when that happens. Hold on 1 second.
I think it was in 2015.
Yeah, it says March 16, 2015.
Yeah.
So,
March 16th, 2015, yes.
okay, thanks. So Ms. Batan knows what we require for that. But for the owner's benefit, there needs to be a proof of the continuity of the use that was granted under the variance since March of 2015, and it's an annual proof. So once every year, you need something to show that it's been existing. And it can't have been abandoned or say a different use from over 2 years. If it's 2 years, the use has been abandoned and the application cannot be extended. It needs to be, you need to apply for a new variance. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Sheta.
I have nothing further. That's all what I have.
Okay. Commissioner Shabeta.
You already stated everything, all my notes on this.
Okay.
Okay, the only other thing, Madam Chair, was, and I'm assuming, I'll just look at my notes again, but I'm assuming this was with respect to the Brooklyn Speedway. The fire department had some issue. There was something about a partial vacate order, February of 2019. I don't know if that's because now they're gone, if the fire department, that's what I have in my notes.
Vacate order of 2019?
Some vacate order.
Yeah, okay. Chief Daly, do you have any notes on that you could? Yeah.
No, I cannot find my notes, but either way, the fire department had issued that illegal tenant a permit, and now that they have vacated, we will be conducting a reinspection of that site to void the account and to confirm that they are gone from that site.
Okay. They can confirm that they're gone.
Sorry?
They can confirm that they're gone from the site?
Yes, they can. They will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. Just to get, because I didn't understand. Have they confirmed or they will confirm?
They will confirm.
Okay.
Thank
you. Okay. All right. So here we go. So we understand our marching orders now. We need to move quickly on this. We need to clean up.
The public? The public?
Yeah,
public.
I understand. We need to move quickly on this. We need to clean up the site and we need drawings that are responsive, and we will not accept any adjournments. And the next assigned hearing date has to be substantially responsive to everything that we've been talking about, because we've been at this for a year and that's not okay. All right. Okay, understood. Mr. Lachman.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, I would need to practice that just a little bit longer. Okay, so yes, I'd like to go to the public.
This is 2191 BZ, 2407, 2417 Linden Boulevard, Brooklyn.
Okay, so how much time do you need to respond to this? And it can't be 3 months.
No, I understand that. I just think that, we still have to get the architect back involved. So maybe at least 4 weeks, 5 weeks for a submission.
Okay. Okay. And so in the meantime, so it's 4 to 5 weeks to submit drawings, but we also need photographs to show that the site has been cleaned up. And any illegal uses terminated. And I request Ms. Batan that you also do a site visit to make sure that you're seeing a cleaned up site. So a drive, something like that, right? You or someone in your office.
Understood.
Okay. All right. I don't think we saw anybody call in, right? Check. No. All right then. So I'd like to, I think we're finished with this. So I'm making a note of 4 to 5 weeks. And so that means your hearing will be in 6 to 7 weeks. Okay. So that's plenty of time to be extremely responsive. And we're not going to tread lightly here because we've been at this too long without any cooperation. So now that the owner is involved, please move as Commissioner Ollie Brown said, like care about the future of your business.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 1:30. Are we going to resume at 2 o'clock?
Oh yes, so we finished. Come on. Okay, so we will have to go back at 2 o'clock. Do people think 30 minutes is enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, resume.
Okay.
Okay, so I didn't realize that we actually had finished the morning session. Okay, good.
So
Great.
we'll resume at 2 p.m.
Yes, on a different YouTube link, right? for
Yes.
everyone, right? Because I see, for instance, Kevin Williams in the waiting room. I'm not sure what he's waiting for, but the afternoon session is a different call-in number, a different web ID number, 978-6693-3380, and you can see that on our website. Okay.
Okay. This concludes the morning session of the hearing for January 11, 2021.